Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the Belgian Grand Prix race reaction. A race that may just have a twist in the tail. Oh boy. I'm going to start this stream a little bit unusually. Hope you're all well, by the way. I should start with that one. Hope you're all good. Good to see you here this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you are in the world. But everything you see on screen now is provisional because George Russell has been summoned to the stewards for a car that looks as though it's going to be underweight, which will be an instant disqualification. Of course, we'll get into that proper in just a moment, but of course that means we could get an update on the results during the stream. Possibly not. It can take a couple of hours, these things, if it goes to stewards and other things with the team being summoned, but we'll see if we get it during the race, during the stream. But do bear in mind, everything you see now, particularly watching later, it could easily and probably will all change, and I won't be able to change it during the stream, so you see what I'm saying. So we'll get to that in just a second. First of all, don't forget to vote on the poll, by the way. I think if I was basing that, I was saying this before I started, if I was basing that vote on the final stint, I would say that race was great. If I was basing it on, it was either the first or the middle stint where things, or the second stint where things went a bit quiet, I'd probably say okay. So overall, I think I put that at good. I think that's a fair vote. I think I'm working out almost like an average there. Not quite, but you know. So I've gone with good, and a lot of people agreeing. A lot of people saying great. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And at the end, 1.1 seconds between the top three. I think we've got a season. Maybe not a Drivers' Championship fight, but certainly Constructors' Championship fight, and certainly a season. And I cannot wait for Zandvoort already. On a subject of cannot wait, I cannot wait to do this. It's been about a year, I think, since I've done this. Good evening, Will.
Hello, pal. Good to be back.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah. I enjoyed the race. I assume you did as well, because it was pretty decent. But now we've got this potential twist. I don't know if you've seen what's come from the FIA.
I have. I find it quite funny that George was sat in the press conference just a few minutes ago saying, "Oh, we were sat going through the data thinking, we must have. Everyone else seems to have missed a trick. Are we making a mistake here?" And it says like, yes, you were. You had an illegal car, George.
I did warn last week as well, by the way, if you're newish to the channel, a lot of people subscribed in July, so thank you very much for your support. If you're not into sarcasm, this may not be the stream for you. Will and I can be a little bit sarcastic at times, but yeah, so we'll keep an eye on the FIA. What I'll do before we get into this then is I will read what the technical delegates report is, then we'll talk about the race, and I will keep a very close eye on the FIA website. So at 17:50 local time, so around about 10 minutes ago, 12 minutes ago, actually, exactly. A technical delegates report fell, which said, after the race, car number 63 was weighed and its weight was 798 kilos, which is the minimum weight required by Article 4.1 of the technical regulations, we'll put it that way. After this, the fuel was drained out of the car and 2.8 litres of fuel were removed. The car was not fully drained according to the draining procedure submitted by the team in their legality documents. And that's as per Article 6.52. The car was weighed again on the FIA inside and outside scales, and the weight was 796.5. The calibration of the outside and inside scales was confirmed and witnessed by the competitor, as this is 1.5 kilos below the minimum weight requested in the Article 4.1, which also has to be respected at all times during the competition. I'm referring this matter to the stewards. That is for Joe Bauer. That one will... it's going to be a shame, because actually I think he drove very well, whether his car was illegal or not, whichever way you want to look at it. But I think he drove very well with his tyres and that. But actually that's going to be, I would argue, slam dunk penalty, DSQ. Well, it'll be DSQ, won't it? It won't be penalty.
Yeah, it looks that way. And as you say, it's a real shame, because that one-stop strategy was inspired. It was an incredible race from George. Fully deserved that win, the way he held off Lewis and Piastri at the end as well. And yeah, it's a shame to see it go out that way. I'm trying to remember the last time we had a winner disqualified, and I feel like it's fairly recent, but I cannot remember.
That's definitely one for chat. I tell you now, they'll be on it already. There'll be somebody that knows. You know what they're like, Will. Yeah, so we'll get on to that. We'll go straight into Mercedes then. We'll talk about Russell. We'll talk about the positives first. Like you say, absolutely fantastic drive. The management on those tyres, nobody coming into today thought a one-stop was going to work. He made it work. half a second clear of Hamilton over the line, 1.1 clear of Piastri, nothing between the top three. We've been, in fact, actually, well, probably the last time I spoke to you, we were talking about 2 more years of Red Bull dominance. And here we are with 1.1 over the line and Red Bull nowhere to be seen, really, in the grand scheme of things compared to where we were. But super drive from Russell, fantastic turnaround from Mercedes this season. And despite how good they've been over recent races, I still feel a little bit shocked or surprised that I'm talking about a Mercedes 1-2. This domination is going to get boring.
Yeah, I think even coming into this one, Mercedes were not who we expected to be out on top. It looked like it was between McLaren and Red Bull. So, yeah, a massive surprise. Then FP1 obviously rolls around and it appears Mercedes are completely out of it. And yeah, here they are 1-2. So it's strange, but it's nice seeing a Mercedes 1-2 again. That's not a sentence I've ever thought I would say about 3 years ago. But yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it's weird.
A few people saying, talking about people disqualified, they said Lewis in Austin last year, Leclerc as well. That was for second and third places, wasn't it? So that's not, we're thinking of the win. Vettel as well in Hungary for second place in 2021. That's a good shout from DJ Naked there. That's a very good shout. But I'm just trying to think. I think you're. I'm sure I'll think about it. Well, I'm sure it'll crop up somewhere at some point. But yeah, super drive from George today. Big surprise to see a Mercedes 1-2, and I can't really. And it's really tricky now. This FIA document's put me in a tricky position because I'm going to sit here talking about, I can't really fault his drive. And I actually think, forgetting that technical delegates report for a moment, I would put him down as driver of the day for that strategy call when he did. Was it lap 26? So best part of 20 laps on those tyres to the end. He said in the press conference, quite surprised nobody else was trying it. I think he was superb today, and I just cannot fault that performance. And I've got to be honest. And I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say it now. I'm a little bit gutted. But I'm also now a little bit relieved because I don't know how bookies pay out. I put a £50 bet in my basket, if you like, on George Russell winning at 22-1, and I bottled it at the last minute. And that would have given me, I think, over a grand's payback. So 1,100 quid, I think.
Oh,
so I'm a little bit annoyed with myself, but I don't know how they pay out if someone gets disqualified, so I might be let off here. I don't know how it works, but yeah, a bit miffed at that one. But yeah, great drive from George. And actually, Mercedes, full stop. Lewis Hamilton today. I'll read Russell's notes first. I always hit my notes, so I like to read them first before we get into that too much on Hamilton. But pitted first did Russell early lap 10. He was the first one to pit the front runners for Haas to undercut Sainz, Piastri and co. Overtook Perez on lap 21 for P4 at turn 5, where a lot of the overtaking happened today, actually. Lap 32 confirmed from the lead that he was happy to stay out and go for a one-stopper. Was already talking about that on lap 26, so that conversation was going on for a few laps, and I've put here driver of the day for me. And Lewis Hamilton, great early pace, to be fair. Took the lead down the Kemmel Straight on lap 3. Lap 9 reported tyres were starting to grain. Went on to say that tyres are all still okay, but rears are definitely dropping, of course. Responded to Verstappen and Russell on lap 11 for a pit stop and covered Leclerc's early stop on lap 26. Or Leclerc's stop, sorry, at the end of lap 26, which is why... that's why they chose to make the second stop, was to cover from Leclerc. But I think there were some question marks from Lewis after the race, Will, that, why did you not pit me on the one stopper? But I think they made the point in commentary, they often do, that the driver doesn't always have all the information, does he? And if they're worried about Leclerc being a threat, you could argue it's the right thing to do. But if George already had in his mind on lap 26 he was going to be one stopping, he's already saving tyres at that point, isn't he, and planning for that, whereas Lewis is maybe pushing a bit harder because he's got to cover Leclerc. I do feel a bit for Lewis because he did lead well, was driving really, really well, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to the feel for the tyres, Russell obviously had the better feel for the tyres today and wanted to take that gamble on a one-stop, and maybe Lewis, because he had been in the lead, didn't feel he could make that call. I might be reading too much into it.
Yeah, you're exactly right with that, and I think it's worth noting as well that Lewis very much had the pace to take the win off George at the end. There were a couple of mistakes into turn 1, I think, on the last 2 laps. He locked up or he went wide, which I think arguably threw away the chance of that win anyway. I mean, at the end of the day, given what we think might happen in the next few hours, he'll take that win in regardless. So in the end, Lewis can moan all he likes. He might well just come out of it as the victor. But yeah, I think no one saw this one-stop strategy working. It was a bit of a gamble coming in with the new asphalt at Spa, and everyone thought actually that that it would murder tyres rather than allow people to go longer. So, again, you just got to hand it to George, who saw the opportunity, mentioned it on the radio, the team agreed, and then let him go through it. Lewis is arguing that he did the same thing. I haven't heard that radio yet. Maybe he did, but given where Merc were at that point, I think it made more sense to be risky with George rather than be risky with Lewis, because he was the one in the lead. And if that one stop hadn't worked out for George, then you could end up giving this race to Ferrari or McLaren.
Well, the talk pre-race was the tyres were going to be like, I think the phrase is chewing gum. And they just weren't, were they? I mean, we had 2 stops, which we kind of expected. But I don't really recall. I mean, I said that Lewis did complain that his tyres were going off a little bit, and some complaints of graining sort of further down the field on the team radio. But nobody was going off the cliff, were they, as we used to call it? They all seem to have some good tyre management. So maybe just things worked. Maybe the new asphalt did help rather than hinder, and maybe temperatures were just about right for the tyres that were bought by Pirelli next year. Bring the softer tyres, Pirelli. That could be a laugh. But yeah, no. Look, and you make a great point as well. It looks as though Hamilton's going to get that win anyway. He's still going to want to sit down with the team and analyse, because if this happens again in 2 or 3 races' time, or even next time we go racing in Zandvoort, he's still going to want the answers, isn't he? And why they decided to allow George to do that. But allow George. George made the call, but they could still have pulled him in, couldn't they? But or made the swap. Were you surprised, actually? Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Were you surprised, before I get into my actual point, that Mercedes didn't swap them at the end? Not because of any kind of favouritism or anything, but just because I was sat watching it, and I was watching the timing, as I do when we've got somebody chasing down the lead. I tend to watch more of the timing screens than actually what's happening on TV. And I'm sat watching my multi-viewer, and I'm watching Piastri, and I'm sort of going, right, 47.3, 47.3, 46.2, 47.4, 47.4, 46.3. And I'm going, they need to swap these drivers. And then when Hamilton got to the back of Russell, I thought, you're throwing this away. Fortunately, Piastri took a lap longer than he needed to get past Leclerc. But there was a moment where I wondered, and maybe it needs to be extended by 1 lap next year, so we maybe get this. I did wonder if we might end up with 3 wide down the Kemmel straight on the final lap. So I was a little bit surprised they didn't swap them around, but as it turned out, it didn't matter. It may not matter anyway now. But I thought with the pace difference and covering from Piastri, they might get Lewis out ahead, but obviously not.
I mean, imagine that, 3 wide down Kemmel straight, final lap. I would not have complained whatsoever.
And a collision.
But 2014 all over again, yeah. I don't know. Mercedes, I think, have a bit of a history of letting their drivers fight it out in these sort of situations. So it didn't come as a massive surprise to me. And I prefer that they let them fight it out. I thought it would have been quite boring if they just said, yeah, George, just let him go and then use the DRS. I don't think George would have been particularly happy with that. 2 weekends in a row of leading driver asked to move aside for his teammate. That would have gone down well with a lot of people. So, yeah, I'm not surprised, but also I'm quite happy they let them attempt to race.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad they let them race, but I was just sort of watching it, and I thought, I was expecting a call to come in, just to go, George, let Lewis pass, he'll give you DRS, follow him sort of thing. But then I suppose, actually, counterpoint to that is, 1, George made the great strategy call, and 2, Russell backs off to let Hamilton through. If they don't get that right, Piastri's all over them. So actually, maybe it would have been the wrong thing to swap them over. But I'm not saying that they should have done it, and I agree with you. Well, it was great they let them race. And I think... just watching the timing screens, I'd have been a bit squeaky bum time if I was Toto Wolff, which I'm sure he was. But yeah, no, overall, I think great weekend for Mercedes. Obviously, it's probably about to take a bit of a down turn. And again, I do feel for Russell, but this is something... somebody made the point in chat, and it was Clansom, said that they might need to weigh Lewis's car now. They tend to, don't they, if one's been found to be in breach of that race. They might weigh Hamilton's car, but we'll see if anything comes of that. But I feel for George, but it's not his mistake, is it? At the end of the day, this is a team error with the weight and things like that. So I'm not going to take driver of the day, in my opinion, from him. But yeah, no, it was one thing to mention actually as well, that they're making the point in chat, which I think is important to kind of bring up at this stage. The DRS today, last year, I'm confident Hamilton breezes past Russell to win the race.
Yeah.
That extra 75 metres taken off the DRS A few people say that's a bad thing because it meant we got less overtaking. I think it was closer to a good thing than a bad thing because it made it difficult to overtake, but maybe it could have been, obviously this is with a lot of hindsight, Will, I know, but maybe it could have been 50 metres rather than 75, something like that, or 65 metres, I don't know, just a little bit longer so that we got people side by side a bit more. But actually, I think last year he breezes past, but that's all ifs and buts, isn't it?
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing, actually. I think it was definitely harder, probably bordering on too hard in a few cases, especially down the midfield. I was, as I'm sure it will come as no surprise to anyone who watches me, but I was watching Ricciardo's onboard the entire way through that Grand Prix, and yeah, I know, and see him sort of stuck, especially at the start of the race in that DRS train. I was thinking, oh, it would have been good. He was on the soft tyres as well, and still lost places off the start. It's incredible, but yeah, I do think around 50 meters. That would have been a better sweet spot, and maybe that's something they can correct for next year. These things are always in flux, aren't they? So, we still got some decent action though, and I think it did. If you look at moves like I think it was the Piastri on Leclerc one, where they were side by side through the chicane. That's the sort of thing we want. And I think for the top cars, that worked really well. But just in the mid pack, we didn't quite get so lucky with that.
Yeah, I think Ocon made a great move as well around the outside of somebody at turn 5, with probably some more through the field as well. So you must be quite, not to be awful to George, but there must be a bit of you now hoping he does get disqualified because that puts Ricciardo P10.
Yep, I've been looking at that as well. I'm torn. I'm really torn. I'm more just interested to see how the Mercedes Twitter account cover a Lewis win from a George disqualification. I can't wait for that tweet. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly going to give them a headache, isn't it? Let's Black Hawk So says, I found more. It was putting drivers side by side in the braking zones. That's a fair point. I'd rather have it slightly too short than too long, because I don't like, because I don't even put it in my notes anymore. When somebody breezes past halfway down a straight in Barcelona and you just like, well, that's not even an overtake, is it? You've been aided through. So thank you to Kim for your super chat. Really appreciate your support. Thank you very much. And for your two super chats. Sorry, Kim. For your 2 super chats. Second one came with a message which says, so disappointed when Bottas pitted for the second time. He was P10. Should have gambled on the one stop. Love the channel. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much for the kind words, Kim. And we'll get to Bottas in a bit. Don't worry. We'll definitely get to him. And not that I've got many in my notes, but hopefully we'll get some press releases through. But yeah, thank you for your support. Let's move on from Mercedes, because I think we're going to come back to them if we get an FIA thing anyway, which I don't know how long it's going to take. Well, sometimes it takes no time. Other times it might take a bit longer. Actually, it depends if they appeal, which I don't think they would for a car underweight. But if they do appeal, then I think they keep the position until the appeal's heard. So it could take a while. It could be the story of the summer break, because there'll be nothing else to talk about. We'll talk about Perez in a bit. Oscar Piastri, P3 today. Cracking drive, actually, from Piastri from 5th on the grid. Finished 1.1 seconds off the lead, was flying at the end. His pace was electric. I'll fly through my notes. Responded to Verstappen and Russell on lap 11. Was undercut by Russell, but came back at Russell and took that place back immediately at turn 5, which was a nice little scrap there for a moment. He overtook Perez for P6 on lap 13 and inherited the lead when Hamilton and Leclerc pitted. His pace suddenly, as soon as he got clear air, was very strong, and he said, and I quote, "It goes without saying, but clean air is king." I love that guy on the radio. Pitted end of lap 30 and was very long in his pit box, and that meant a 4.4 second stop. Still rejoined ahead of Verstappen and co. However, it was only 1.1 seconds off the lead, and that was at least 2 seconds in the pit stop cost there. So that's something to bear in mind. Lap 35, tried to move on the outside of Leclerc at turn 5, couldn't make it stick, got in the next lap, but as I say, probably a lap too late, but also the pit stop to factor in there. But I think overall, a really good race from Piastri, but it's quite strange because looking at the podium pictures afterwards, and it looks to me, Hamilton looks a bit disappointed to be second, and Piastri looks disappointed to be third. I think there were probably 3 drivers on that podium, and only 2 of them thought they were going to win that race, and one of them wasn't the race winner.
I think all 3 might be grumpy in a minute.
Yeah. Have we got anything in there? No, just checking. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. I was too busy being sarcastic. Sorry. No. Piastri had a solid race. There's not much I really disagree with. Well, I don't disagree with anything you've said there, Sean, quite frankly. So yeah, I think looking back, I was on the podcast earlier in the week, and we were talking about Piastri and Norris, and coming off the back of his first win, we saw quite a big step up from Lando, and whether we'd see the same thing from Piastri. And I actually didn't at the time. I thought we'd been seeing more of a kind of gradual kind of build up in Piastri's confidence. But this weekend, I would argue he was the better McLaren driver throughout the majority of it. I think, Lando, even in interviews, just seemed a little bit off throughout the entire weekend and didn't quite seem to be on it, was complaining a lot, was saying he just didn't feel right with the car, that he wasn't driving well. Again, just very kind of self-deprecating. Meanwhile, Piastri's just getting on with the job and, yeah, drove a stellar race out there.
It's funny as well, isn't it? Because Hamilton's bemoaning not going for the one stop. But Piastri's doing the same, isn't he? And he was out front at one stage. I think Karoon was doing his analysis afterwards, and I think he had a bigger gap to those behind than Russell had, or something like that. The numbers were more in Piastri's favour than they were Russell's when he was leading. So could he have maybe stretched that to a one stop? But he pitted early, didn't he? What was he, lap? Where was he? Did he pitted in lap 30? That would have no. Russell was talking about one stop at lap 26, wasn't he? So Piastri could have maybe gone from before then, but it's so difficult to call those. You're expecting the tyres to fall away. You're in that battle. You don't want to be undercut. You don't want to lose track position. I actually don't think either way though. Piastri will look back at this. I think P5 to P3 might feel a win got away. Could be P2, likely be P2 in the next coming hours. But I still think that's a cracking result from a guy who I think is doing a great job again this season. So awesome stuff from Piastri. And Norris today, I've got to say, Will, once again, another poor start. I mean, it seems to be becoming a bit of a running theme. He had a poor start in Hungary, the second phase of the start. Was it Barcelona? We had a tricky start as well. Got it wrong today as well, wide on the exit of turn 1. Cost himself a few places. And ultimately, I'd say maybe some Norris fans will disagree here, but I'd argue probably never really recovered from that because it was so difficult to overtake today because of the DRS trains and the delta, the overtaking delta wasn't as small as people expected it to be. So he really never really recovered from that, and it wasn't like he was shoved out there. It was just an understeering mistake. And one thing Norris, I often talk about Norris being quite hard on himself, but one thing he always talks about is I need to get my start sorted. You know, this start is costing me, and it's done it again. He looked. Well, let's put it. We've got some grumpy drivers in the paddock. Let's put it that way. He didn't look very happy in his media pen interview afterwards. So he's got to get. I know it's an obvious statement. Well, you can tell me I'm being stupid making the obvious statement if you want. But he's got to get these starts sorted because, all right, fine. The drivers' championship is still a long shot this season. But if there's a drivers' title fight next year, he can't afford to be dropping these points.
Yeah, you're right. I think they said in Hungary that it was a glitch and it wasn't Norris's fault.
Okay.
It was shifting into second gear. There was apparently a glitch with the gearbox or something electrical in the car. I don't know. It's been too many years since I did my degree. I can't remember anything anymore. But yeah, even so, it's a trend, and it's a trend that, as you pointed out, appears to be affecting Lando more than it's affecting Piastri. Maybe they'll find something. I think that shift news came a day or two after the Grand Prix when they looked back at the data. So yeah, maybe there's something there, but you're right. At the end of the day, that really hurt him throughout the entire Grand Prix. And yeah, I did think he'd get past Verstappen at the end, but you're right. That overtaking delta with the way the DRS worked this year as well, it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, he tried the undercut. He tried the overcut, didn't he? He tried the undercut. He tried to have the better tyres. Just nothing seemed to really click for him. But ultimately, and I just looked at the timing screen again and kind of did a double take. There was actually only 9.8 seconds between the top 6. He was 6 tenths off Verstappen. It was only 6, nearly 7 tenths off Leclerc. I mean, he's not that far off P4. So I don't think it was anything as dramatic as a horrifically bad drive. I just don't think. I mean, he said strategy was okay after the race, but I just don't think things seemed to click for him. He couldn't quite get in that right window. You know, he wanted to be ahead of Verstappen, so he tried an overcut, tried an undercut, didn't really work, and that was kind of where he ended up being stuck. Locked up at the final chicane and cut the corner. That was one thing he did in lap 23. That would have cost him a little bit of time. Rejoin with no problems really in the end though. Pitted for the final time on lap 29 for hards and rejoined behind Verstappen in P7 but ahead of Sainz. Like you say, well, I thought on those harder tyres, which were apparently the better race tyre, I thought he might cruise up to the back of Verstappen and get past, but obviously Verstappen had DRS from Leclerc for chunks of that, so that won't have helped. He got past Perez as well, by the way, on lap 31 on the run to turn 5, but yeah, I don't really know what to say about Lando. It's difficult because I've got lots of notes on him around pit stops and locking up and the mistakes at the start and the running wide and things like that and getting stuck behind Verstappen, but really that was his entire race. So I'm not just going to sit here and waffle randomly unless you've got something written down somewhere, Will, that was going to absolutely blow my mind about Lando Norris's race.
I'm afraid I don't know.
I love the drama. It's never going to happen today. I keep refreshing the FIA page, knowing full well that it's only been referred to the stewards. They've still got to summon Mercedes and Russell, so that's going to be another hour. Then they've got to actually make a decision after the hearing. That'll be another hour, so it's not going to come in at all. But I would say, just to sort of wrap up on the top two teams, let's say, I would be very surprised if we don't get a disqualification unless it turns out the FIA scales are faulty. I think that's the only thing that saves Russell, but apparently a team have checked that with them and they're happy that the scales are right. So I think we are looking at Hamilton, Piastri, Leclerc, Verstappen, Norris, Sainz, Perez, Alonso, Ocon and Daniel Ricciardo. I can hear Will dancing as your top 10. So that's what I think we're going to get certainly by the end of the night. So let's put it that way. But yeah, we'll move on from McLaren onto Ferrari. Pole to 4th for Leclerc, 7th to 7th for Sainz. What an eventful race. He led for quite a while, actually, Sainz, so I'll give him that one. But yeah, I didn't think Ferrari had the pace to win. I was very excited yesterday when Leclerc was officially getting pole position because of Verstappen's penalty. Didn't have the pace to win. Didn't have the pace to challenge sort of Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull. And that's kind of how it ended up, really. So actually P4 for Leclerc, Verstappen still behind, I think is actually a really good result. A lot of people look at that and you might have gone, what? When I said that, Will, but P1 to P4 sounds crap, but when the pace isn't in the car on race day, I actually don't think that's a terrible result at all. Did a good job, Leclerc, today. Held the lead at the start, thanks in part to the fighting of Perez and Hamilton. Lost the lead to Hamilton on lap 3, responded to other stops on lap 12 and rejoined ahead of them. Pitted at end of lap 25 for hards. Tried the undercut attempt on Hamilton to cover Perez as well, but 3.4 second stop wasn't great and it didn't work. He came out 2.4 behind, but actually I'd argue once he lost the lead and fell behind Hamilton, that actually not, I wouldn't say a lonely race for Leclerc, but not a particularly eventful one. He just always seemed to be sort of 1.5, 2.5 seconds behind Hamilton. So I think it was quite clear the pace wasn't there today. But am I wrong? Would you, if you were Charles Leclerc, obviously going from 1st to 4th isn't great, but overall, would you, given the way this season's gone at times and the pace that they had today, would you be content or, I mean, not happy with a P4, but content with a P4?
Yeah, I think content's the right word. I think Ferrari did the best with what they had this weekend. The pole was a massive surprise, especially when Ferrari made the strange call to leave their fresh intermediates till when the track was at its worst. I'd already written into my script and recorded, in fact, because I was recording as I was going through qualifying, that Ferrari made a hash of strategy again, and then Leclerc goes to pole, and I'm like, oh, well, that's messed me up a little bit. But it was an incredible lap for pole. I think fair play to Charles on that one. I don't think anyone saw that coming. But P1 to we say P4 will probably be P3, of course.
Yeah,
I think I don't think that's a bad effort at all. Given what we've seen from Charles from I think Canada onwards, really after that Monaco win, he's fallen away a little bit, and the team have in general, they seem to have lost their way with upgrades as well. Not quite sure why their mid-season package failed. So I think it's a good move back to form. I think. As I say, they did the best with what they had. So not ideal, but yeah, I think it will be a bit of buoyed confidence, especially in qualifying, given the next kind of low drag circuit we come to is Monza, and that's somewhere that they'll want to perform. So yeah, we'll wait and see on that one.
Yeah, so Ken wants to know what the difference between happy and content. I would say, I mean, this might not be definition, but I would say happy is, yes, we got everything we could. Brilliant result. What a great drive. We did more than we expected. I'm thrilled with that. And content is kind of like, yeah, that's probably where we should be. Is how I would maybe put that as an F1 driver. So I think actually a great one there is that Kaori says there's not necessarily elation with contentment, which is probably fair as well. Let's not get into this conversation there. We're not going to do dictionary definitions. I make up lots of words on these streams. Why not? Raul says Leclerc will be happy, very happy. He was on slicks on a dry track. He can't ask for more. Even the chat are sarcastic tonight. Terrible. Yeah, that's true, Raul. Yeah, when you mentioned Inters, I thought at least it was on a wet track they used them. That's something for Ferrari. But no, I don't think the strategy was particularly excellent from Ferrari today, but that's probably not going to come as a massive surprise. But I don't think it was horrendously bad. But I just don't, even if they got strategy absolutely bang on, I don't think they're threatening for the win, really. I mean, Leclerc in the end, 8.5 seconds off the lead. I'm just not. I wasn't feeling it as a Ferrari fan today, but I'm happy with P4, definitely. So, that's all Ferrari will care about, is that Sean's happy, surely. Carlos Sainz, again, sounds like a really boring race, P7 to P7, but actually did lead for quite a while. And he had a moment at turn 14 whilst he was leading on lap 15. Back end snapped out, he ran into the ground, which cost him about 3 seconds, which probably doesn't do an awful lot to his race. He was 9 seconds, nearly 10 seconds off Norris. Rejoining Pierre behind Norris when he pitted on lap 20. I did put here, can he get the tyres to the end, and then put exclamation mark? No. Pitted, 8 laps later for the mediums? You want to talk about Ferrari strategy being weird? That's weird. Carlos Sainz talking about possibly one-stoppers, and the team talking about possible one-stoppers. Bring him in on lap 20, put the mediums on, then pit him 8 laps later. So clearly they didn't feel like they were going to go anywhere near to the end of the race. Lap 39 overtook Perez for P7 with a nice move to and through turn 5. So pretty much Carlos Sainz's race summed up. There was a moment, though, Will, where I thought he was going to go for a one-stopper. And obviously, I mean, what do you make of that 8-lap, let's say, middle stint? It wasn't really middle, but you know what I mean. It just seemed a bit odd.
Yeah, I thought he was going to kind of play the team game and hold up Hamilton for a bit, but I don't think that would have done a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Sainz really, I think, was hurt by his qualifying pace, basically, and whatever went on at the end of Q3. He definitely did kind of lose out at the end of having the inters on at the wrong time, arguably. Or the fresh inters, I should say. The fresh inters on at the wrong time. So, yeah, I think at that point it was kind of day done from that one. We didn't get any safety cars, and it was going to be very hard to kind of fight your way through the field given the way the DRS was working this weekend. So, yeah, I think there's positives to take away. His pace in that middle stint wasn't awful, I don't think. Yeah, but as you say, a bit of a nothing race for the Spaniard today.
It's points, isn't it? And that's kind of Ferrari, I would argue, in the pecking order, in no particular order. McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari probably 4th place, aren't they, really? So had Perez actually been up there for a change, that would have put Sainz in 8th place. So Leclerc ahead of him, 7th, 8th. That's kind of where Ferrari are, isn't it? If everybody's finishing where you'd expect them to. Just to let everyone know as well, George Russell has not been officially disqualified, but he has been summoned to the stewards at 6 o'clock. No, at 10 past 6 local time, which is about 40 minutes from now. So I suspect we're not going to get a decision on the stream. So keep an eye on the socials later tonight. For alleged breach of Article 4.1, as I've already gone over. If you are just tuning in, the car was found to be underweight after fuel was taken from it. And so 1.5 kilos as well once the fuel was taken out. And if that is correct, which there's no reason to doubt that it isn't correct, that would be disqualification guaranteed, which would promote Hamilton to the win, Piastri to P2, and Charles Leclerc on the podium for Ferrari. Let's have a look at chat super quickly, and then because I feel like I've flown through this top 3, but I think the focus now is on Perez and Mercedes and what's going to happen here with George Russell. So I'll take a few points from chat, and then we'll move on to the rest of the point scorers, which will be, if you're interested, Red Bull, Aston Martin and Alpine at the moment. I might squeeze RB in there just for Will to put them in the point scorers, because I think he's quite excited about that one. Black Hawk So says Toto is using the defence of the one-stop using more rubber, and because of Spa, no chance to get pick up on the tyres at the end. Might be why underweight. That's a fair point, but obviously I'm not saying you're saying that's not still disqualification, Black Hawk So, but for anyone who's not sure, the FIA aren't going to say let them off on that, are they? So it's still going to be you're underweight, you're going to get disqualified. If there is something positive to take away from this weekend, it is that Charles Leclerc is still capable of doing special things if you were ever in doubt in the first place. I've never doubted Charles Leclerc, except for actually all the times I've doubted him, which is pretty much all the time. It's not so much Charles that I doubt. It's that team. Oh, goodness me. William says this is what we needed. Controversy before the break. Yeah, it'll keep us all talking, won't it? But yeah, nothing official at the moment on whether he is actually disqualified, but I think everybody with a rough knowledge of how this goes knows this is probably disqualification. So which part did they forget to put back into Russell's car to cause it to be underweight? There must be a cup holder on a garage floor somewhere, says Sakensha. Like, yeah, they didn't put his CD back in there that he was listening to. That's part of the problem. And his snacks as well, they took them out. That's a good point. Let's move on to the point scorers then. So, Red Bull, Max Verstappen P5 today. I actually, all right, fine. It's not P11 or P12 or P14 or wherever he's done it before from through to the win, what we'd expect with that dominant car we've seen in the past. But actually, I think P11 through to P5, given how close things were, the difficulty overtaking, I don't think that's a bad result at all. The most important thing for Max Verstappen today, and I know that you don't need to tell me, I know that he wants to win races, so he's not maybe going to take too much comfort from it, but he does actually extend his championship lead today, and that's the most important thing for him. So he's kind of stopped that getting away from him, which is important, only by a couple of points, but it helps. He finished 6/10 ahead of Norris and just under 7/10 behind Charles Leclerc, up to P8 by lap 3, and that's kind of where he stayed for quite a while, actually. Got stuck in a bit of a DRS train behind Perez, and I think that eventually became Piastri, was ahead of that one. He pitted very early on lap 10 for Haas to undercut Norris, and then pitted for the final time on lap 28 for mediums and rejoined right behind Perez. There were some... we didn't hear team orders on the radio, so whether it was Perez using common sense or whether it was a genuine team order, I don't know. Let me know in chat if you had that open on your F1 TV or whatever. But he moved out of the way to let Verstappen through after he caught him the second time. And that was kind of it for Max. Just got caught up behind. If he wasn't stuck behind Norris, he was stuck behind Leclerc, and if he wasn't stuck behind one of them, it was Perez. So he just kind of, the story of Verstappen's day is got himself up into P8 pretty quickly, pitted at the right times, delivered the strategy he needed to, delivered the pace when he needed to, and spent time behind other cars. Couldn't get past it, was just the way it went today. But I suppose one thing I would say on Verstappen is that there seemed to be a lot of chat over the radio, Will, about sort of management, because there were a couple of times he came over the radio asking if he can push. So I think there was a lot of management going on in places, but obviously if you're stuck in traffic, you've got to give yourself that cushion, haven't you, and pull out and get some clean air and drop 2 seconds so that you're not chewing up your tyres. So maybe that's part of it. But I guess my argument is that in between the pit stops when he needed to push, he had the pace to undercut and overcut or whatever when he needed to. So I don't think he could have done much more than 5th today. Given how, again, that extra 75 metres in the DRS, possibly a podium. Certainly P4, but just not to be today. But still P5, championship lead extended. That's the main thing for him.
Yeah. I mean, how alien is it? Red Bull, the 4th team we discuss on here. That just feels weird. But yeah, I find it really interesting that overnight, everyone, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, were all saying Verstappen's going to fly through the field. Verstappen's going to be miles quicker than everyone else. He's going to just carve his way through the pack and win the race with ease. And I was thinking, will he though? Because this isn't 2023 anymore.
He didn't think he would, did he?
No, he didn't. And part of me thought, well, I don't know, is that just him saying that? I feel like we might have had a few messages like that throughout 2023 when he went through and then won the race by about 5 minutes. But yeah, I wasn't convinced Verstappen could do it at the beginning anyway, and then it was quite nice to see myself proved right for once, if I'm honest. But yeah, I agree with the DRS thing that you mentioned. I think if you had the 75 meters, then yeah, he easily would have been able to get a little bit further up, but he was sort of unable to drop back at a few points in his stints because he had Norris so close behind him, particularly towards the end. So that probably would have hurt him a little bit as well, as he was trying to carve through. He also had pressure from behind for a fairly large portion of this one. So yeah, it was odd. Perez, I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, but that was dreadful.
Joanne says the cars have become so aero-sensitive again. Yeah, it was always going to happen. They did all these wonderful tricks to try and make them easy to follow, but then these clever engineers always find a way around them to produce dirty air. So that's the way it goes. It's always happening. Clancy says hindsight is always the easiest way to view what could have happened. Oh, of course, yeah, but then this wouldn't be, it's a race reaction. Of course, I'm using hindsight, Clancy. If I could predict the future, I'd be on my yacht somewhere right now with my millions. So yeah, I know that I'm being sarcastic as well. Don't worry, Clancy, leave me alone. I'm just picking on people today.
You would have won that bet.
Yeah, don't. When I'm sat tonight going, can I afford a takeaway? I'm going to be devastated. Like, I got a massive one for 1,100 quid. And then probably end up in hospital with a heart attack. But there you go. it's I don't know what to say. It's strange. If you want a stat as well, by the way, you probably already heard it, but that is the first time since 2020 that Max Verstappen has gone 4 races without a win. It's also the 6th, for the first time in F1 history, the 6th race in a row where the pole sitter hasn't won. And also, if you'd like to know, it's the 2nd year in a row where we've not had a virtual safety car or a safety car at Spa, having had one every year since 2014 prior to that. So, a lot of lifting and coasting going on out there because there's no safety car, so no management really on fuel could be done other than lifting and coasting. And all the drivers sounded knackered, by the way, which was good to hear. I like to hear them put through the ringer a bit, know they're working for it. But I've got nothing else to say on Verstappen other than I think again that extra 75 meters, maybe if he'd not come out behind Tsunoda, the stop had been a little bit quicker, he wouldn't have lost that time, maybe would have jumped Leclerc in the end, which would now apparently be a podium if Russell does, as we expect, get disqualified. But I think P5 is 10 points, it's extending his lead. That's what he wanted from this weekend, I'm sure, was the win, but he can take some comfort from that. But Sergio Perez, I'll ask the question right from the start before we get into his race. Will, I think I know the answer. Chat can let me know, yes or no. I don't think this should be based, as I discussed yesterday in the qualifying watch along, on one race. But if it was based on one race, do you think that was enough to keep his seat if they are thinking of a change?
No.
No.
No, not at all. But I think, honestly, the writing's been on the wall for a lot longer than that. You've got I think it was Planet F1, who admittedly aren't, the most reliable publication out there, but they reported just last night that VCarb are doing a filming day with both Ricciardo, Lawson, and Tsunoda, with it highly kind of touted as a Ricciardo versus Lawson for that final seat with Checo. So, I mean, I think this was a done deal a long time ago, and if he didn't win this race, then there was no chance at keeping his seat from Zandvoort onwards. And not only has he not just not won it, he's fallen through the field, ended up miles behind Max, who started in 11th, just really struggled and looked like he struggled throughout the entire Grand Prix there.
Yeah, I mean, people don't like it. I get it all the time, the comparison to Verstappen, but in these situations when things are so close at the front now, that comparison has to be a factor because, as you say, he started 11th, finished in 5th, Perez started 2nd and finished 8th, and even without his pit stop of around 20 seconds, he's still a long way off Verstappen, sort of 12, 13, 14 seconds off him, and that isn't good enough. The only defense, if you like it, it's not even defense I've got for Perez, is that that second stint wasn't the best stint, and he was a little bit compromised there on strategy. But I don't think to the tune of 13, 12, 14, whatever seconds. I don't think that's it. The pace just wasn't there. It all was at the start, really. Tried to cut off Hamilton, didn't get a good enough start. Very close to contact, actually, I must say. I wonder if that might be a Grosjean style accident from 2012 at one point. It was quite close, but no. Dropped to P3 on lap 1. He was the lead car of that DRS train around, I think it was lap 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. Did break it on lap 8, pulling to 1.4 seconds to Piastri. Responded to Verstappen and Russell on lap 11, and then pitted for the second time on lap 21, so quite a short stint there, which maybe compromised him, which meant he was going quite away into the race on those tyres. But then George Russell made a one-stop of work, so that's 2. He maybe could have done it. Did say on lap 22 we are very slow on the straight, so that's a factor as well. Let Verstappen through on lap 30 and pitted again on lap 42 for softs to go for fastest lap. So he did take that point for fastest lap, which you would think, oh, well, that helps Red Bull in the constructors, which it technically does because they took it off McLaren, but McLaren still outscored them by, I think, 21, 22 points. Something like that, which I think is ultimately what the issue is going to be. And what this, I don't think the race was good enough. I will give him that little bit of a, cushion on strategy, but other people had bad strategies today and still did all right. So it happens, or bad moments in strategy and they still did all right. So I don't know how much weight people can put on that. I suspect not a lot. But as I was talking about yesterday, with the qualifying watch along, the point was made in chat. I completely agreed. We shouldn't be at the point where we're talking about Red Bull making a decision on this weekend. This needs to be a decision that has to be based on the last 3, 4, 5, 6 weekends even. They've got to look at, even if Perez had won today, they still need to look at the previous 4 or 5 races and say, yeah, but at Zandvoort, he could end up 8th again. He could be down in 11th. He could not get knocked out in Q1 in Monza or something. They've got to look at everything. And I'm not convinced that there was a lot he could have done this weekend. What it is going to boil down to, again, as I've kept saying over the last few weeks, is whether or not Red Bull feel it's worth a risk or it's worth putting Ricciardo or Lawson or even Tsunoda. It frustrates the life out of me, Will, that he's not even in the conversation. No offense to your man Ricciardo or my man Lawson. We've got a rivalry this week, Will. I'm like, come on, Ricciardo, crash. No, but it's no disrespect to those drivers, but it does frustrate me that Tsunoda's not even in the conversation, apparently, according to a number of sources in the media. It's a little bit confusing to me, but temperament. He's not technically a Red Bull junior, as people keep telling me in chat. Maybe that's a factor. I don't know, but or maybe RB just keeps Tsunoda there because he's the most likely they feel to score points and keep the others at bay. I don't know, but his contract's then for next year, so he's all right for next season. But it's all going to come down to if they think they can put somebody in there. And again, let me know in chat what you think, and you will as well. Will in a second, I'm sure. But I'm just starting to wonder if looking at that result today and that performance today, which is a shame after actually a pretty solid qualifying yesterday. Did a good job to be up there. But after that performance today and the last few races, are we at a point now where Red Bull, the way McLaren are closing in some ways, and actually Ferrari, by the way, are not that far off, 64 points off, something like that. It's not as far off the top as you think. I'm not saying Ferrari are going to win it, but I'm just saying. But do you think we're at the point now where maybe... this might be a really over-the-top way to state it, but maybe they've almost got nothing to lose. Just pop a Ricciardo in there or Lawson because, they might be worse, but the chance of them being dramatically worse than where Perez is at the minute is probably quite slim, he says, as Lawson gets in the car for Zandvoort and finishes 20th or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think it's got to the point now where, to quote Red Bull themselves, Perez's results are unsustainable. And... okay, qualifying was good this weekend, but that's one highlight in what has otherwise been another kind of no-show weekend for Checo, and you don't get points for quali. He needs to pick up on the race, or he needed to pick up on the races, and he hasn't done that. So what was the quote? I'm going to try and very quickly find it now that Helmut Marko came out with. Give me 1 second because I retweeted it. Here we go. He says, that's not what we expected from him. He completely collapsed, especially in the last stint. So that doesn't particularly bode well for Checo. You've also had Ricciardo seen chatting with Mekis and Horner straight after the Grand Prix. So I think he's done. As I said in my video that I put out this morning, not to plug that, but I am plugging that.
No, feel free.
I think, okay, the quality might not be what we had in old Red Bull Ricciardo, but can it be much worse than what we see with Checo at the moment? Lawson, for me, is too big of a risk because while I think he did a fantastic job subbing in for Ricciardo last year, going straight into a top team, having not had that experience, I just don't think it makes sense. If they were going to do that, then they should have had Lawson in the RB this year instead of Ricciardo, arguably. But I think as a short-term option, Daniel makes the most sense. And with that, I'm off to buy tickets to Zandvoort.
Well, no, on the Lawson thing, my issue with him going to Red Bull is, let's call it the Gasly Albon factor. That's a very big leap very quickly up against one of the best in the sport, arguably the best for some people, but one of the best in the sport. It's not, I don't want, and yes, this is biased. I will admit this is biased towards Liam Lawson, of course it is. I keep saying it, but I don't want Red Bull to take another junior and effectively chew them up and spit them out because they can't match Max Verstappen, which nobody's expecting, but they get torn apart and it cost him his career. I know he's linked to Audi for the future, but it ends up costing him his F1 career. I would rather see, if they have to make a change, I'd rather see either they go super bold and go and buy somebody out of a contract for the rest of the season. I don't think that's going to happen, but they've got their own drivers to choose from. Or, like you say, drop Ricciardo in there. He's older, more experienced. I'm not saying that necessarily guarantees that you're mentally stronger, but he's been up against Verstappen before. arguably a weaker Verstappen than he is now, but still he's been there before. I don't see Ricciardo, sorry Will, staying around long term at RB next season anyway. I think that was always going to be Tsunoda and Lawson probably. So this is really his chance to get in there. I think Ricciardo's probably the most likely option, but I have said it all along, I'm not convinced he's a solution. But then Perez clearly isn't the solution at the moment, so they've got to try something. Just on Perez, by the way, what I mean with his future, I'm going to make a bold prediction. Here we go. Deep breath, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready for this to be wrong. For God's sake, don't place any bets on this. For goodness sake, you'll lose your money. My prediction is Ricciardo gets in that Red Bull for the rest of this season, and Sergio Perez replaces Logan Sargeant at Williams. There you go.
I hadn't factored that in.
Yeah, because James Vowles has already said that the last couple of weekends, Logan Sargeant had kind of shown enough progress that he was on the right track to being kept on, but his performance, and this was after qualifying, so far at Spa was not, he didn't consider that was enough for him to commit to keeping Logan Sargeant for the rest of the season. So if Sergio Perez becomes available with some sponsorship money as well, you know, but now the next question, though, is whether Perez wants to go from Red Bull to Williams. That's the next question, isn't it? Or whether he might factor a sabbatical and then go and sit next to the Sauber motorhome and go, hi, I like Nico Hulkenberg. He's a good mate of mine. We used to be teammates. You got a seat for next year. Might be the way to go. I don't know. Some money as well for Sauber, which no team's going to sniff at. So it's just a thought I had. If Williams are going to replace Logan Sargeant and Perez is available, why not 5 months there and see what happens for next year? Might piss Carlos Sainz off, but you know, that's just a thought. Chat not totally agreeing. Some are saying they do agree, some are saying no. KMS Boss says, ooh, spicy, indeed. But yeah, no, I think just on that race today, yeah, I think there's going to be a couple of driver changes this summer, and I suspect one of those will be at Red Bull. Which again is a shame, because I know he gets a lot of grief, and now I get told off for this for saying it, but I do like Checo. I've been a big defender of his, but even I can't defend the indefensible. I'll try.
Yeah, I really like that Williams plan now. I hadn't thought of that. My gut
Will's
was
writing a
just
video
saying,
as we speak.
Yeah, there we go. I'm just gonna. Well, I mean, at the moment my comedy review is already going to be outdated in the next hour when Russell gets disqualified. So we'll make the other video I made today go as well. But I said that Checo sits the second half of the season out and then ends up at Sauber for next year, which would also make sense. But actually, that Williams move. Yeah, I mean, given that they were trying to get Ocon, allegedly, a few weeks ago, it wouldn't be out of the question. If they can afford Ocon, then could they afford Perez, who really, if he wants a seat, would, would have to back down to whatever Williams say on the money front. I think with Ocon, there'd be a little bit more negotiation pay-wise, but they could probably get a little bit more out of Checo for maybe a little bit less, who knows? But I do like that. I do like that.
He's got a sponsorship as well that might cover that salary. So
exactly, and he may well be an improvement. Well, no, he definitely would be an improvement on Logan. So that works. A Perez Albon partnership, just the Red Bull reject squad at that point.
Oh yeah, never thought about that. Yeah, let's get a third car in there, put Gasly alongside him. Why not? No, just a bit of, just let you know as well. By the way, the decision on Russell is imminent, apparently. So we are going to move on to the rest of the field. I'm sure I'll talk at some point over the summer more about Perez, but I think we wait now. There is this test coming up next week, which has been billed as this big shootout, but I should also point out that Ayumu Iwasa and Yuki Tsunoda are both taking part, so I'm not convinced it was maybe not scheduled to be a shootout, but that's probably how it's going to end up between Ricciardo and Lawson, although I suspect, again, maybe see it as a test for Lawson to get in that RB, ready for Zandvoort, just to get him up to speed. I know it's a different car, but get him up to speed, and then hey Liam, just sit in the simulator for a few weeks. Danny, hop in the Red Bull. Checo, thanks for your service, mate. Off you go. But there you go. We'll see what happens in the coming days and weeks. I'm sure the rumours have already started, but we just started them, haven't we? So there you go. I've set up Perez for Williams, so there we go. Moving on though to where do you get to? Aston Martin, yes. Fernando Alonso, P9 today, and Lance Stroll, P12. I will warn everybody right now, right now that I have next to no notes on the rest of the field, so we will have to get through this quite quickly, and I will go to press release as well if we need anything. But Alonso P9 today, like I say, from P8 on the grid. Actually, to be honest, Will, with Verstappen coming through, that is probably the midfield victory for Alonso, isn't it? P9, I would say, because Verstappen out of position, you put him back in position, that drops him down to 9th place. That's probably about where he should have been anyway. So I think Fernando Alonso probably quite content, not happy. He's another one that wants to be winning races. He's not deluded. He knows that's not going to happen anytime soon. But, you know, P9 today, it's a really solid result for him and a good drive. I didn't see a lot of him, which tends to mean a good drive. But there are a few DRS overtakes, I think, that he managed to pull off, and just a Fernando Alonso drive. There you go.
Yeah.
Please tell me you got something.
Honestly, the only time I remember seeing an Aston is Ricciardo going past Stroll on his onboard, and then Stroll binning it into the wall in FP3, which I found was quite ironic, given just before the session the drivers had been warned not to hit anything because they're currently quite tight on crash damage. But yeah. Sorry. Official. George Russell's been disqualified. There we go. Yeah, I had two tweets come through. The first one said Lewis Hamilton seen leaving the track with 1.5 kilograms of George Russell's car. And then the second one, official, George Russell's been disqualified for the Belgian Grand Prix. There we go. Lewis Hamilton's the winner.
Let's just do that very, very quickly then before we move on to Lance Stroll's highly eventful race. And I will read the press release for Aston in a moment. But yes, it is official. George Russell has been disqualified from the race classification. All drivers move up in the classification. We'll get through that in a moment. So first things first, everything you see on screen now is out of date. No, I'm not changing it whilst we're live because it'll destroy my PC if I try it for starters. We've got enough to get through. So just bear in mind the points are different and wrong. So don't have a go at me later for that one. I'm sure somebody will. We know the reason. The stewards heard from the team representative of George Russell, the technical delegate and the single-seater director and the FIA single-seater technical director. Car 63 was weighed on the FIA inside and outside scales, with both scales showing the same results of 796.5 kg. The calibration of both scales was confirmed and witnessed by the competitor. So Mercedes were happy that everything was above board there. During the hearing, the team representative confirmed that the measurement is correct and that all required procedures were performed correctly. The team also acknowledged that there were no mitigating circumstances and it was a genuine error by the team. The stewards determined that Article 4.1 of the FIA Formula 1 technical regulations has been breached, and therefore the standard penalty for such an infringement needs to be applied, and that is, of course, disqualification. Decision of the stewards is taken independently of the FIA and are based solely on the relevant regulations, guidelines and evidence. So Mercedes saying, yep, our mistake, we screwed up. FIA saying, yes, we know you did, and George Russell ultimately loses his win. So George Russell, to confirm, has been disqualified for being underweight. Not him, the car. Just to make that clear. That wasn't a judgment. I'm not body shaming or anything like that. But yeah, George Russell's car, underweight. He's been disqualified, which means your results. Lewis Hamilton is the race winner now. Oscar Piastri takes P2. Charles Leclerc, sorry, George, but woohoo, Ferrari podium, takes P3. His first podium since Monaco, I believe, actually. Max Verstappen moves up to 4th place, which helps him in the championship a little bit. No, it doesn't, because Norris moves up as well, doesn't he? It's still 2 points. Yeah, no, it's still 2 points. Irrelevant, Sean. Norris moves up into 5th place, Sainz into 6th, and then it is, of course, Perez in 7th, Alonso 8th, Ocon 9th. Wait for this. Daniel Ricciardo P10.
Whoop, whoop.
Lance Stroll 11th, Alex Albon 12th, Pierre Gasly 13th, Kevin Magnussen 14th, Valtteri Bottas 15th, Tsunoda 16th, Sargeant 17th, Hulkenberg 18th, and of course Show DNF, as did George Russell was DSQ'd. So there we go, that is confirmed. Sorry, George, but gutted for George actually, because again, for the millionth time, he drove really well today. His strategy was spot on. His call over the radio was bang on. His tyre management was great. He did well to hold off at the end. So I think he's done nothing wrong today. So I take nothing away from him except his 25 points and the win. So there we go. Sorry, George, but Ferrari did win and Ricciardo got a point. So you've got two happy people here. But also gutted for George, of course. So we'll not pop the champagne, but I might have a fizzy Coke later or something, as opposed to a flat Coke. Can you buy flat Coke? Random question.
Not that I know of.
There you go. I thought I'd try and break the tension there of Russell's disqualification with a quick random question. But yes, Fernando Alonso, we'll get back to that. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll, not a great race. He actually complained over team radio, by the way, of being slow on the straight. So frustration there for him. Straight line speed is a flipping joke, he said on lap 15. He didn't use flipping. Fernando Alonso said in his press release, I am pleased with 9th position today and 2 points after a hard-fought race. We had a few different strategies planned for today. We extended the first on the mediums, and then on the hard tyres we managed to pace quite well and had decent tyre degradation, something which was lower for everybody, I think, today than we were expecting. And we thought there might be a chance of a safety car. And when there wasn't, we thought, why not extend and remain on a one-stop strategy? Decision paid off, and we managed to score some points. Lance Stroll said it became clear during the race the tyre degradation was lower than expected, so we elected to go for the one-stop strategy. We were running P10 a few laps from the end of the race, but by that point I was struggling with the tyres and didn't have the speed to hold position. We were missing the pace we needed to fight for more today. As a team, I think we still have a lot of work to do to catch back up to the top 4 teams. And Sir Michael Crack says 2 points from a one-stop strategy for Fernando, and the team was the best we had today in Spa. Managed to make the one-stop strategy work for both drivers, and this was the same for the race winner. Ex-race winner now, of course. Lance drove well, but we weren't able to get him into a point-scoring position. Strategy worked together with the pit stops today, and we've secured a small reward. So, fairly, I mean, he said there, Fernando Alonso, I am pleased with 9th place, but actually he'll be even more pleased because it's 8th place now, of course. So it's more points for Aston Martin, so he'll be very, very happy with that one. So good stuff there from Aston. Anything in your notes, if you've got any notes, Will, on Aston and that, just apart from Stroll complaining of straight line speed? They were sort of in that, we had like, for much of the race, we had 2 packs, didn't we? The top 8 and then everybody else. And then it kind of broke into maybe 3 packs. And sort of Aston were kind of in the middle of all of that, weren't they, during the race?
Yeah, it was a bit of an invisible race for, I think, a lot of the midfield, if I'm honest. But Aston in particular, I think, as you put it earlier, I think P9's the best that they could have got at this stage. In this kind of Formula 1 and Formula 1.5 system we have, where we have now 4 teams at the front, it's even harder to kind of break into that top 10 when you haven't got any big name retirement. So, yeah, fair play to Fernando on that one. Lance had a very much a Stroll-esque race. I mean, he can be glad that Piastri kind of took inspiration from his old Racing Point pit stop days. But yeah, besides that, not much going on.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the theme for the rest, because the focus was, and rightly so, I always say this, was at the front. And the strategy there, and it was always going to be. So we didn't see an awful lot of the midfield, apart from in the little box, the picture-in-picture, didn't we, really? Was all it was there. So Esteban Ocon finished P10, obviously now promoted to P9, started P9 actually. So boring race for Esteban Ocon. So boring, in fact, I have literally not a thing in my notes, although I seem to recall, unless I'm thinking of Hulkenberg on Gasly, I seem to recall a nice move by Ocon around the outside of somebody at turn 5. So if that is the case, then well done to him there, but not a lot to say on Ocon today. But it is points on the board, a couple of points for Alpine, which will be important for them. Gasly, of course, moves up to 13th place after Russell's disqualification. Didn't really have the pace of his teammate this weekend, actually, Gasly. Not a lot between them, because it is quite close in that pack anyway. But yeah, it's Alpine were there, Will, which again I feel really awful for, because I'm sure there are lots of things we could talk about if we'd actually seen them, and if these streams were happening in 2 or 3 days time when all the replays are out there and onboards are available, we'd probably talk about how great Ocon or Gasly were today, but didn't see a lot of them today on TV.
Yeah, cool livery though. I'll give him that.
Fantastic.
I've really enjoyed the Deadpool and Wolverine look. Yeah, nice to actually see a livery on that car as well. That was a nice change.
Well, I reckon, sorry to interrupt, I reckon keep the red and black, do a sponsorship deal with Monster, and then you can keep those sort of 3 claws at the back.
Oh,
you see?
Yeah.
There you go. Because it's so easy to do sponsorship deals. Hey, Monster, come and sponsor us, and I'll go, you're cluster flip of a team. No, you're all right.
Honestly, let Monster sponsor Steak, then you've got a good-looking car. I mean, that's surely set up for yeah. That said, are they going to want to move away from McLaren at the moment? Probably not. So, hey.
I've got nothing, by the way, no press release or anything from Alpine at the moment. So if anyone in chat has anything we can say about Alpine, then let us know. If not, then we'll roll on, other than they've got a sexy livery.
I mean, probably because they're given the rate that they go through their their employees. They probably sacked their press officer at this point.
Yeah, probably,
so.
yeah. Or that's Bruno Famine's new job. Or Flavio Briatore, maybe. Still trying to log into Twitter. Yes, it is official. George has been disqualified. Yes, definitely. Del says Alpine qualified well, though. Yeah, no, that's fair. No, Ocon in particular, didn't he? He was ninth. In fact, well, 9th and 12th. So that would be 10th and 13th. No, Gasly wouldn't have moved, would he? Because it was 11th for Max. So, yeah. They finished well as well. It's a point. It's a point on now 2 points on the board. So, got to give them credit there. That's a great shot, by the way. It's just come up on the stream. But yeah, no, it's great credit there. I will say as well, very quickly, we were talking earlier about last time a winner was disqualified. Tom or Thomas on Discord has just let me know. Michael Schumacher was disqualified in 1994 at Spa. It was that the last time we had a disqualified winner. I feel like there must have been a more recent one because that's like 30 years ago.
There was a guy in the chat that mentioned the same thing as well. So that's two
Wow.
people that have suggested. Maybe it is. I thought it was way sooner, but again, the two that I come back to was obviously Hamilton and Leclerc in the US Grand Prix last year. They hadn't won it, and then Vettel in Hungary 21, but Ocon won that one. So yeah, was that a fuel thing? Was that a weight thing for Vettel? I think it was fuel related for Seb. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was as similar to George's thing by the sounds of it. Actually, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently it was the last time a winner was disqualified was 30 years ago.
I'm just used to it being Formula 2, and every time Richard Verschoor wins a race, he just gets booed off the podium for some reason or another.
So there we go. Our in-depth analysis of Alpine's race was that Michael Schumacher was the last winner to be disqualified 30 years ago. So you're welcome, chat. You're welcome. Let's throw RB in there now because Daniel Ricciardo is a point scorer, much to Will's delight, I'm sure. P10 now for Daniel Ricciardo. Crossed the line in P11. Was only 2.3 seconds off a point, and I think actually was running until the last couple of laps, maybe, Will, in the points anyway. So maybe you could argue deserved that today. So it's not just inherited that. It was in the mix for a point. So well done to him. Tsunoda, not so great, down in 17th place. I don't know. I think this must be wrong. Because the official timing screen has Tsunoda down as one stop and 0 laps on the soft tyre, which, I mean, technically, if he did one stop and he didn't use the soft tyre, that is 0 laps, but I don't know why they've got him listed as those today, so just to let you know. I don't know why it's being weird like that, but yeah, I'll wait for their press release to come in maybe, but there's not an awful lot to say there, but I imagine, 11th place, promoted to 10th. Danny Rick, well, I guess my point is, again, Danny Rick was in and around the points, wasn't he? So a fair result today for him.
Yeah, he was. I mean, this is the one bit where I actually know a little bit more about it. Can actually talk. I can actually mention things now. Yeah. I'll be honest. After Hungary, and then I see them be the only team to roll a driver out on softs. I thought, oh no, here we go again. And then we didn't get the safety car, which is where you'd think those softs would have kind of helped. But from then on, given the way that the tires were going, given that they were actually not chewing gum as we all thought they would be. He went a lot further into the stint and was just. I think Pierre, his race engineer, came over the radio and said, "You're all good on tires. Just push it as hard as you can," which helped. And that early stop allowed him to kind of jump into the top 10. I think he was running, P10, P9, maybe as high as P8 at one stage. And then after that, it was a case of fighting back through those that were pitting out of sequence. And Yuki, I feel, was, I mean, obviously starting down the order, he was very much used to help Ricciardo in a lot of ways. I mean, the moment Ricciardo got even close to him, they boxed Yuki. That probably wasn't the most ideal strategy for him. So I think it's a little bit unfair to really assess anything he ended up doing today. I don't think he was running the most optimal race. It was more kind of damage limitation, really, for him, having had to recover from the engine penalty that he got earlier in the weekend. So yeah, not much to really take away there. Daniel Lapointe, very, very happy with that. He was running in the points up until I think 4 or 5 laps from the end, and then Ocon just steamed by and was on another planet for those last kind of 5-10 laps. So it was the best that he could have done, I think. Best RB he could have done, and obviously now getting a point out of it isn't bad. So yeah, very happy with that.
In future, when I do these streams, if you're not a lead guest, let's say, Will. When we get to RB, I'm just going to come and find you, and because we never have anything for them. That's probably the most detailed analysis of anything from RB all bloody season. Thank you very much for saving my ass on that one. I've just tried to see if I can update the thing at the bottom and see if I can do it while live, multitasking, which is generally an absolute bloody disaster for me. So, yeah, DSQ is what we say, isn't it? Disqualification for Russell. Hopefully this will all work, but I assume not because of the unique way that these things work. But yeah, so thank you for that, because I honestly had no idea what was going on, Will, to be honest. I'll sort the spacing out there in just a moment, but yeah, so everything's wrong on screen, as I say. Just leave it with me. I'll see what I can do, but obviously the focus is on waffling through this lot. I'm going to say no more on that one. Williams, in fact, I'll tell you what, actually, we'll go with, Williams for the rest, it would be, wouldn't it? Yes. Yeah, sorry, I'm having a right meltdown. Williams, P13 for Albon from P10, Sargeant P18 from P18. So, yeah, move them all up a place, of course, because of George Russell's disqualification. The only thing I've got on Williams, and I love this anyway, so I have to be fair. One of the highlights of the day for me, a well-executed double stack is what I have here. Albon pitted on end of lap 8, actually, came in, and then he was out just as Sargeant was starting to pull into the pit box. So perfectly timed there from Williams. So well done to them for the double stack. But I've not had their press release, which is really strange. Unless everyone was waiting for that steward's decision, now they're all going to come in at once. But have you got anything on Williams that's particularly exciting? Well, again, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we didn't see a lot of them on TV. I guess the only thing I could add is that Albon might be disappointed given where he started, that he wasn't threatening for a point late on. He was sort of in the mix prior to that, but it's just not worked today, which is a shame.
So conveniently, rather conveniently, Albon was fighting Ricciardo for a lot of that race, so I know a little bit. So from what I gather, after that first set of stops, that's when kind of Ricciardo and Albon's race kind of aligned a little bit. Ricciardo boxed first, ended up in clean air, and then up the road you had Sargeant fighting with somebody. I don't know. I think it might be one of the Haas cars. Sargeant then went into the gravel, which I don't think we showed on the main kind of TV feed back at the turn. Is it the turn 4 end of the Kemmel Straight? I've forgotten the sequence of corners, which is really annoying me now. The chicane, but he dipped into the gravel there. And then at that point, Williams basically used him to hold up Ricciardo for a lap or two to try and box Albon and negate the undercut, which then didn't work because apparently Sargeant can't even drive slowly effectively. So, at that point, Sargeant kind of got stuck in a race with Tsunoda, which, it was about as exciting as you could imagine it to be. So a bit gutting for Albon. He would have been, was he P11 at the end, did you say? I can't remember what you said he finished.
Albon was, 12th now, obviously.
12th, so, it is actually a shame because I think Albon showed, and I say Albon, I'd say Williams, but that's just Albon showed pace at certain points in the weekend. I think FP1 he was 3rd, wasn't he? And then, was it Q1 or Q2? He was showing, I think Q2, he was looking like he could have got, if he'd been out at the right time, he could very easily have got into the top 10 there. And maybe at that point there was something on. But I think a potential missed opportunity for Williams. They could have been that team to, like RB, snag that final point in the end, but just missed out. And that I'm sure will be fairly gutting for them, given this is one of those races where they should be looking to try and nab points.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just going to call you my back marker correspondent now. that's it now.
There's multiple levels to that.
Yeah, let's not dig that deep. Anyway, I've got nothing else to add on Williams, so we'll move on to Haas. Hulkenberg was actually the first of all the drivers to pit. The end of lap 7, moved to the hard tyres. He was the one that made the really nice move around the outside of Gasly at turn 5 for P17. Doesn't sound very exciting, P17, does it? But still, it was a nice move. It's another one of those corners I've been obsessing over this in recent weeks. Like turn 1 at Spain. There are a few others as well. There's just something really lovely about a move around the outside of Les Combes. The outside of turn 5, inside of turn 6. And so I'm always going to give Hulkenberg plaudits for that one. And Kevin Magnus, he was 19th, by the way, Hulkenberg today. Obviously promoted to 18th. I'm just going to say where they've ended up now. Magnussen up to 14th after that disqualification for George Russell. Team have said, so Hulkenberg said we had no pace, no harmony, no rhythm. I feel like I want to dance into a song now. I just didn't get off on the right foot with the car all weekend, and we didn't manage to find a sweet spot across the sessions, and we need to look at it a little into why. Also, forget this weekend and go again after summer break. Magnus said, I think we had a decent... I've lost it. There it is. Where you gone? Oh, why didn't that? Sorry. 1 second. I keep losing my emails. Magnus said, I think we had a decent race. We just didn't have the pace to fight further up. Took what we could and did a one stop, which was fine. Can't say we did anything wrong. We just weren't fast enough, which is a surprise, actually. I thought Haas were going to be one to watch this weekend, actually. I thought they might be quite pacey. Track might suit them, but obviously not. I'm looking forward to summer break. Everyone is, obviously. And Ayu Komatsu says it was a tough race today. Didn't have the pace. Kevin drove a really good race. Managed to do a one-stop strategy. Russell did a one-stop to win the race compared to his teammate who two-stopped. Magnussen was 14th, AO, but I take your point. Reacted well, converted Kevin's strategy. Nico struggled a lot more. Couldn't have done a one-stop strategy with him due to degradations. He had high tyre degradation. Needs to investigate why. And then obviously on to the summer break. So that was Haas there. And last, but by no means least, although some may disagree, Valtteri Bottas, P15 now. Zhou Guanyu, unfortunately, despite disqualification for Russell, still DNFs, bless him. Nothing on Bottas except he started 14th, finished 15th after the disqualification, like I say. Kind of was in that area all race, to be fair. I've got the press release and going to it in just a moment. But Zhou Guanyu slowed on lap 3 at turn 9-10, losing power, he said over the radio. Got going again, but more than a minute off the car ahead, so was pretty much game over for him there at that point without a safety car. Said losing hydraulics and pitted to retire on lap 6. So a shame there for Zhou Guanyu. Can't do anything really if your car's not working, can you, to be fair? Bottas said we gave it a good try today, attempting something different with the strategy, even if it eventually didn't pay off. I could have probably stayed out, and even we could have finished a couple of places higher than 16th. Most likely still would have bought us a point finish anyway. Still wouldn't have bought us, a point finish anyway. The positive he's taking away is that he felt they were in a slightly better position in terms of race pace against our main competitors, although still not enough for a top 10. So something to consider there. At least they feel like they're making progress, even if the timing screens maybe and the results don't reflect that, but there you go. And Zhou, today's race marks a disappointing end to the first half of the season. Day has started quite well for us, opted for the hard compound pace, and overall car balance felt good, and I was able to gain positions, was close to the two Haas cars in front before experiencing a loss of power followed by a loss of brakes, which ended my race. We had potential today. Starting on the hard tyre gave us some strategic options, making the outcome even more disappointing for the entire team. So that's all that's been said there from Sauber. Anything you've got on Haas and Sauber that we can add in there, Will, before I answer some questions when we get to Q&A, do driver of the day, and obviously super chats too.
I've got very little, if anything. I'm going through daily now, having to remind myself that Bottas still exists in this championship. So
no.
Yeah, I guess Haas, I can say a bit of a disappointing weekend in general, given their kind of upturn in form over the last few months. This was, very much not what they expected. So, a little bit worrying on that front. Sauber, maybe a marginal improvement. Bottas did actually look like he was keeping up in the initial stint. Zhou obviously then could have given us a safety car, which at the time I thought, that's a shame we've not got a safety car. In the grand scheme of things, with hindsight, I'm quite happy we got the race to play out all green as it did. So quite happy that he was able to trundle back to the pits before retiring. So thank you for that one, Joe. But that's probably his biggest contribution to the season so far. So I've got nothing. Basically, is the waffly way around that. Yeah, I've got nothing.
You're like me. You kind of feel like you have to say something even if you've got nothing.
Yep.
It's like, so Sauber, they've got a green car. They're based in Switzerland. Got to say something. I'm hoping everyone can still hear me okay. I'm assuming they can because Will's laughing, so that's okay. But I just opened Photoshop on my PC, went, why, you fool? It is working. I've managed to update some of the graphics, but I'm not going to do the championship tables because that's way too much to go through. So there we go. Hamilton win number 105, by the way, just to let you know. Pascal, thank thank you very much for your super chat. Says, can't believe it is the summer break already. I'm satisfied with the progress of Sauber this weekend. Q2, decent race pace and pit stop improvements. 2.4 seconds for both stops. Expected worse at Spa. Thank you very much, Pascal, for your support today and your support through this first half of the season. AC says, your take on Checo versus Ricciardo versus loss of Red Bull seat post-summer break. We'll get into that. We have to talk about it a bit, AC. We'll come back to that in a bit once we get into Q&A. John T has pointed out in chat that the decision document for Russell is document number 44. Just sometimes things work out, don't they, like that? And it's quite funny. Ruby is here. Ruby is our resident Lewis Hamilton fan and is quite excited. He says, LH105, that is the message. Thank you very much, Ruby, for your super chat. And thank you as well to... I think it's Andre. OZ it comes up as, but I think it's Andre. I feel gutted for George, but as a Charles fan, I take the podium trophy with open arms. Thank you, Mercedes. Yes, thank you very much for your support there. I'll say OZ or OZ or Oz, whichever, but I think it's Andre. Thank you very much for your super chats and your support. Please do leave a like, by the way. We're nearly at 200, really. 687 of you still here, so let's get a few more likes. Get over 200. That'll be absolutely fantastic. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new as well. There will be content through the summer break. When that is and what that is all depends on what happens over the coming days and week or couple of weeks. So all I can say and all I will say is watch this space. There will be stuff out on the channel that will explain what's happening, but you might want to keep your eyes peeled for that one. That's the tease going into the summer break, because I'm just like that. I'm cruel, I tells you. So if you have any questions, please do pop them in chat. Start thinking those now. We'll do driver of the day as well. We've not done it for a while, so let me know in chat if you want to put your surname in. Go for it, of the driver you think gets that one. But who would you have gone for? Well, I think it was Hamilton got the official driver of the day. I feel like from the conversation we've had without the disqualification, we were both probably leaning towards Russell. I don't know if that changes your view now, but who's your driver of the day?
No, I think, Russell's definitely up there for me. Piastri could be a maybe out of left field choice. I think he drove a very solid yet quiet race to third or second now. And then I think they said, 11% of the vote ended up going to Verstappen. I can see why he would earn it as well, to be honest. I think given what he had and given the difficulties, obviously, with the DRS, I think he drove a really good race. Yeah,
I think Russell was... excellent. The reason I'm sort of a little bit reluctant is just because I don't know what that 1.5 kilos did. Did that help him with tyre degradation? Did it help him with his pace? Things like that. And you start to sort of question, it might not have made any difference at all. And there'll be people saying it won't have made a difference, but others will say it made a huge difference. It's a bit difficult, but without the disqualification, 100% Russell for me. I think you're right on Piastri. I think Hamilton as well drove extremely well. At one stage, actually, it looked like he was, I won't say unbeatable, but looked like it was going to be tough for anyone to stop him today. He was looking pretty comfortable. As it turns out, he did get the win anyway. So I think he's in the mix. And Verstappen P5, I think you're right as well. But it's got to be Perez, surely. He was absolutely excellent, bless him.
One of those little send-off driver of the days on their very last race where they get it out of pure sympathy, yeah.
He got fastest lap as well. Maybe cut some chicanes like Alonso did in Abu Dhabi a few years ago when he just had enough. But no, that's kind of... I think those drivers, if I have to pick... Who did you pick? Sorry, well, I was listening, but it's gone already.
I said about 5, didn't I? Let's go with George. To be fair, 1.5 kilos, it probably does do a bit. But still, I think, that 1.5 kilos wasn't taken out of his brain. That was, he still made the call on strategy, and it was a masterstroke call. So fair play.
I was going to say Hamilton or Piastri, and I was going to say Piastri, but actually it was not. It was that long in the pit box and that not getting past Leclerc that lap earlier that actually maybe cost him the fight for the win today. So I'll have to go Hamilton on that case. I know they're not massive errors in when you're watching it on TV, but in the grand scheme of the race, actually, 2 extra seconds on the pit stop and an extra lap behind Leclerc makes a difference, doesn't it? So, but yeah, I think lots of drivers drove really well today from what we saw, actually. So, yeah.
Actually, just so we don't offend anyone in chat, I'm going to change my answer. I want to have my driver of the day as the go-kart that spun on the live feed during qualifying.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. 2 British people picking 2 Brits for driver of the day. We're doomed. Yay, Tsunoda. It's my driver of the day. Joe made it interesting at lap 3. That'll do as well. That's a great shot, by the way. It's already been up once with the fireworks and the 3 cars across the line. Sorry. Somebody just popped a super chat and it's gone already. Where have you gone? There you go. Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan says, love you, Sean. Love you too. Not how I would want to win, but ... It's a win's a win. A win's a win. like we say, last time a winner was disqualified for a technical infringement was 30 years ago. So it doesn't happen very often, but it may come round. Hamilton was disqualified from a podium in the USA. These things can come round, can't they? Sometimes they go for you, sometimes against you. So I feel for George today, but I also think that had Hamilton won without the disqualification, I still think that would have been fair because I think he drove really well today. So Mercedes got the win either way, but no, the driver standings aren't. The championship standings are not updated. I can't do them when live. I could try, but one, it means doing maths while live, which is a nightmare. And secondly, because I've got the wins, the poles, and the podiums, I've got to try and change all that around, and I might need to move some positions. So the championship standings are wrong. The race winners, the result at the bottom is correct, but I'm not going to change those. So you'll have to get your calculators out and do that yourselves, I'm afraid. But it's the biggest swing really is George loses 25 points, doesn't he? So let's have a look quickly on Wikipedia because, thank God for Wikipedia. Or even the F1 website might work better, Sean, because that's just gone and completely crashed on you. So there we go. Just to see what that might do. I don't know if the standings have been updated. They have, I think. So George Russell drops back down to 8th place on 116 points. I don't think Verstappen's lead changes, does it, Will? Because they both got promoted, so it's still 2 points the difference today in Verstappen's favour. So I think that stays the same. Leclerc moves to 177 points, so it's 277 for Verstappen, 199 for Norris, 177 for Leclerc, 167 for Piastri, 162 for Sainz, 150 for Lewis Hamilton, 131 for Sergio Perez, 116, like I say, for Russell, 49 for Alonso, 24 for Stroll, 22 for Hulkenberg. They don't really change, do they? Oh no, Ricciardo gets extra point for 12. Yeah, 12 points there. Ocon gets extras. That's 5 points for him. So yeah, I'd have to faff about moving drivers around, and that's doing that live would be painful for you and painful for me. Unless you're happy for me to go silent for 10 minutes and leave Will singing, which
that's dangerous.
It's dangerous. Thank you to Ruby for the second super chat. So Sean and I agree on driver of the day. Team Ferrari aligning. There you go. It's happening, Ruby. It's happening. Thank you for your support. Let me know if you've got any questions. Like I say, we'll just have a read through some of your drivers of the day. Ramon says King Lewis. That's a difference. That's not even that one. Random Bossman says Russell. Surya says Hamilton. Joe says Russell. Nope. Either George doesn't have the lifting coasting or fueling. Yeah, I'll read that in a minute, Eddie, if I come back to it. Ramon says Hamilton, like I say. Russell for Vesk. Home hero stuff, of course, the Mac. Thank you very much. Joseph says Ocon. Kaori says I will never say Lewis. There you go. Kate Kyber says Piastri. Pascal says Piastri. It's kind of mixed up here with lots of stuff all going on at the moment, so trying to find them. Simon says hands on head. No, Hamilton. I2 Drizzy says Lewis. Ruby obviously says Lewis. Hamilton says first of all Hamilton won. Shaw gets a good shout for taking the 4th fastest car to P4 net P3, says Joe. Fair enough. Lewis was great. He was indeed. Good drive. Clanton says if disqualified, they can't be driver of the day. There you go. It's a rule. We'll insert that rule for next time if it ever happens again. And anybody else say? I'm just doing anybody a bit different. It was George and Oscar, says Kevin. Driver there was clearly Perez. Lol, gotcha, says John T. Fair enough. And yeah, not really any surprises in there. I thought sometimes somebody says something and I go, oh, that's a really great point actually. But no, it's not really. Ocon was impressive, says Shantanu. It's a couple of points on the board, definitely important in that car. I'm glad that car has scored points. We'll see lots of pictures of that livery now, so that's a good thing. But yeah, there we go. That was it. I did see somebody say, I think Ruby wanted puppy news. Puppy's fine. Barkley's gone home now, so it's just Baxter on his own now, so he's grumpy. But he's all good. He might be on a diet, which is a bit hypocritical coming from me, from tomorrow, because he's getting a bit chunky. I noticed his bum's a bit chunky today. So that's your puppy update. So he gets his walks. We'll have to keep doing that. So that was his. That's the puppy update. Sean is telling us all that we are predictable and boring. Well, it gets people back for all the years they call me boring. So there we go. Yeah. So questions in chat. Let me know. So AC did ask in the super chat there. So we'll just kind of, I guess, revisit what we're saying about Sergio Perez. I think me and Will are pretty much aligned that we think that if which I don't think it should be. But if it is just based on this last race in Belgium, that's not enough to keep your seat. And if you base it on the last 6 races, I still don't think it's enough to keep his seat. So it's all going to come down to this week now, isn't it? And who's going to get there. But I think I don't want Lawson next. I don't want him to be chewed up and spat out and his career be over before it's really started. Daniel Ricciardo seems like the safest risk to take. Mate, is that exaggerating a bit, Will? Safest risk to take? Can there be a safe risk?
Nope. Happy with that. Very happy with that.
I think people know what I mean. But of the options available, it still infuriates me that Tsunoda's not in the mix, actually. Because when I look at Gasly got his chance. Perez has been given plenty of chances now. Ricciardo had his chance. He's been given a second chance, been back in the RB. Albon got his opportunity. And then there's Yuki Tsunoda there doing a pretty decent job in that RB. And they're just like, no, you're all right, mate. Stay where you are. I think, oh, God, could you just give him the rest of the season in that second car? But apparently not. So, I mean, you never know. You never know. I don't think Iwasa's in the mix. He is doing a test this week, but he's racing in Super Formula this year at the minute. So, and I don't know. Last time I checked, he was actually probably not in the mix to win the title in Japan, but I think he's sort of one of those that you might fancy an outside bet on. I'm just gonna go check because I did have it written down earlier where he was in the standings. So he's currently he's 4th in the standings, 31.5 points. Tomoki Najiri is top on 47 points, so he's sort of in the mix there, isn't he? As Iwasa, so I can't see he's going to want to. Well, I was going to say give up Super Formula for a race seat, but it's an F1 race seat, isn't it? So, of course he's going to. But yeah, it sounds like Ricciardo versus Lawson. We'll see what we get in the. Is it this coming week, Will? This test that they're all talking about?
Yeah, Wednesday is what I've read anyway.
There we go. Hadjar's a good shout as well. Warren M says Hadjar to RB. I think Hadjar will be a good shout for next year. But I think in order for that to happen, Lawson, Ricciardo, Perez, or Tsunoda have got to shuffle, haven't they? Or 2 of them have got to, because you'd be putting Lawson and Hadjar in there. But Hadjar's doing all right. Great job today, winning the feature race and extending his championship lead. So I think he's one for the future. Maybe 26 for Hadjar might be the earliest, I'd have thought.
Yeah, the only way I can see it happening for 25 is if they promote Ricciardo now, and then Ricciardo completely flounders, and so they ditch Ricciardo, put either Tsunoda or Lawson alongside Verstappen, and then bump up Hadjar into RB.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Actually, do you know, I'm going to put this question to you, Will. I'm going to go scroll through chat. This is a question from me to you, so it's not come from chat, but I suppose it technically has. Somebody said the other week, I was saying that I don't think Ricciardo's the answer, because you look at the last few years, and even the biggest Ricciardo fan will admit it's been tough. I look back at the last few years and think, is he really the answer? But somebody made the point that actually Ricciardo, in a better car, might come to life. And that sounds obvious. You know, you're going to get better results in a better car. But I think in terms of his driving, he might suit a better car, might find it easier to adapt to. Do you hold that view, or is it just one of those things? It's just really bloody tough being Verstappen's teammate.
I think potentially, yeah, there's definitely room for it. I mean, I look at the one-time Red Bull in Ricciardo's original stint had a bit of an awful car, and that was 2015, and that arguably is Ricciardo's worst season with Red Bull. Let's not talk about McLaren, but yeah, that was the year that Kvyat beat him in the standings. So maybe, and given what we saw from Ricciardo in the simulator back last year when he was on his little sabbatical, and then how he allegedly performed in the tests at Silverstone, which of course got him the drive at AlphaTauri as they were then. Obviously, you can't really correlate the lap time at Silverstone to to what we saw in qualifying for the 2023 British Grand Prix, but they said that he would have been on the front row in that Red Bull. So maybe we'll have to wait and see, and you won't know unless you put him in the car. So there you go. Chuck him in the car, please.
See that, do you know, actually, I know, well, you're not being tongue-in-cheek, but I know what you're getting at there. But, like, it's a fair point. You could do all the tests you like in an old car, and you can speculate about, you know, looking at his times in the RB versus Perez in the Red Bull, but without just putting Ricciardo in that car, we're never going to know the answer, are we? So maybe given his age and that his experience. Maybe it's just a case of chuck him in there, get Lawson in that RB for the rest of this year and maybe next year, see how he does. If Ricciardo does well enough, keep him in the car for next year and then look at a promotion for Lawson or Tsunoda if he leaves or whatever. It all changes there, doesn't it? But they definitely need to, I keep saying this as well, they definitely need to get rid of this bottleneck they've created with the signing of Perez. Perez in 2020, that signing for 21 was absolutely the right decision based on Perez's form at the time and what Red Bull needed. But it has, with Ricciardo coming back as well, has created a bit of a bottleneck. So they need to start clearing that anyway if they seriously want to keep promoting juniors. But AC says if Red Bull want to win a championship in a car that is not a rocket ship, Carlos Sainz is the only good option. Only he can save Max's gearbox. Lewis Rins, Russell Scott. Yes, Russell has been disqualified. Lewis is the winner. Again, championship tables are wrong, but everything else should be correct now. So, but I'm not doing the championship tables because I'm just lazy. Whoever brings the most sponsorship, like Checo did, says Lokazemi, or Lokazim. You've told me how to pronounce that before. I'm sure you have, but there we go. So, question from CPB. With this result, Lewis is now 52 points ahead of George in the last stages of his final season at Mercedes. Is this potentially concerning for Russell's number one status?
No.
No, because I don't think there's going to be another. There isn't anybody else to be number one, is there? It's the first thing. But secondly, also, this isn't George's fault. His drive was pretty faultless, wasn't it? So,
and also, you got Silverstone where he was he in the leads? I can't remember, but he had the technical fault, which lost him the crucial points there as well. So if you think about 52 points, that's effectively 2 race wins, which that's not fair because obviously it's less than that because Hamilton still finished. So ignore what I was saying there. But I think at the start of the season, Russell was all over Lewis. I think since maybe Silverstone onwards, Hamilton's come back a little bit. And obviously you've had now the 2 didn't finishes / DSQ for Russell, which has maybe inflated that gap more than it deserves to be. But I wouldn't be concerned. And I think if you end up with Antonelli in the car for next year, which is what it looks like is going to happen, then Russell will be de facto number 1, regardless of what Antonelli can show for the rest of this season in F2.
Yeah. I mean, the latest on silly season seems to be that was a mouthful. Silly season seems to be whatever happens at Red Bull, God knows they'll sort out with the drivers they've got. Antonelli looks nailed on for Mercedes. Sainz is going to Williams, but on more immediate things, Logan Sargeant isn't really guaranteed beyond today at Williams for the rest of this season. So we've actually got quite an interesting kind of like last year's silly season was terrible. This one's been a bit up and down, a bit predictable in places, but now we've got like a summer break silly season coming in with Perez and Sargeant and what's going to happen there. And then next season, I mean, talk now of Bottas staying at Sauber for next year alongside Hülkenberg. Haas have got their lineup tied down. Alpine sounds like Jack Doohan is possibly favourite there. Things are starting to come together, but I still feel like there's a twist in the tail there on silly season. It still does infuriate me though. What I've got to say, sorry, and I mean this with all due respect to teams lower down and fans of teams lower down. It does infuriate me that Carlos Sainz is having to decide between effectively a Sauber, an Alpine, or a Williams.
No, I agree. I still think Sainz, put Antonelli in the Williams, Sainz in the Merc for a short-term deal is what I would want to do. But that's the way Formula One works, isn't it? It feels really unfair that he's lost that drive. But oh well. I had another point. It's completely left my head, so I'm going to shut up for a bit.
If it comes back, just shout randomly at me. Go, Sean! Got some interest. Jonathan Mezzer has come from the future to tell us that Danny replaced Checo and immediately crashed into Max in the first race. Oh, dear. There you go.
Don't.
How does a car lose weight during a race? ? Says Ruby.
Zempic. I like that bit. It'd be a mixture of fuel, tires as well when you're wearing the tire down, and those are the 2 main ones that come to my mind anyway.
Yeah. So I was reading 2 things at once. I tried to work out whether I wanted to read that one, but I'm not going to read it. Was Toto FaceTime Max whilst George was on the podium? ? asks Van. Van, we'll just say Van. I don't know. I didn't see what he was doing there, but
was he not FaceTiming Susie? I saw that on Twitter, but I saw something on Twitter which said that he was FaceTiming Susie in the last few laps because he didn't want to watch. But I don't know how true that is.
Well, if it was in the final few laps, it definitely wasn't Max. That might explain when he get past Leclerc if he was on the phone. But yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, that's the rumour that refuses to go away, isn't it, at the moment? Verstappen to Mercedes, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Just read this poll, by the way. Rate the Belgian Grand Prix. 45% said great, 39% good, 11% said average okay, 3% were watching something else and said it was bad. Joseph said, can Piastri beat Norris next season for a title? I'll answer that immediately. I said it yesterday in the quali watch along, actually, when a similar question came up. I think at the moment, as impressed as I am with Piastri, I think all things equal, dominant car next year, head-to-head between Norris and Piastri, I'd probably still give Norris the edge, but I think it would be an edge. I think it would be very close. I think Piastri would be right in the mix. Obviously, with a dominant car, he would be. But I think you'd be looking at sort of Rosberg, Hamilton. 2016 is a good example of that. I think really close between them at the end. Maybe a title decider, but I just think Norris, a bit more experience. But then at the same time, Will, you could easily argue too many mistakes. We saw last season with some of his or early this season, some of his qualifying, mistakes on that final flying lap, and then the mistakes at the start that we've seen again today. They would be a massive factor in a championship battle with your teammate. But I think I would just give the edge to Norris, and that is as somebody who is rapidly becoming quite a massive Piastri fan. When I get paid, I'm going to order some Piastri merch. So there we go.
I'm with you on that. I think McLaren are set up as what I would say the most future-proof, arguably as well, one of the strongest lineups currently as it exists on the grid right now. So this year, I think, is very much a year to make those mistakes. And despite they still outscored Red Bull today. So I think with George's disqualification, I want to say that amount that they outscored Red Bull by will increase somewhat as well. So they will creep closer in the Constructors' Championship. I think the drivers is Max's now to lose unless he has, a load of DNS. Maybe if Daniel does crash into Max, there you go, and that's what brings the Drivers' Championship back into some level of it makes it somewhat realistic that Norris could come back, but I think this is the year that McLaren get as close as they can to Red Bull and the Constructors. They may well beat them. I think it's honestly 50-50 at this point, depending on how the change of the summer break plays out. But then next year is when things get really exciting, and I cannot wait for 2025 now, because we are going to have at least 3 teams, maybe even 4 teams, with very, very competitive cars. You could even bring in 5 if someone like Aston Martin can get their act back together and the field closes up even more with the stable regulations. It's going to be a thrilling year. I can't wait.
I think this year, if Perez stays, which a lot of people seem to think he won't, but if Perez stays, I think McLaren win the Constructors.
Yeah, agreed.
No doubt about that at all. And to be honest, actually, even if Ricciardo gets that seat, I'd still maybe back McLaren. Nothing against Danny Rick or Lawson, whoever gets it. I still think McLaren, as you've said there, probably one of the strongest lineups on the grid. Norris and Piastri, it's massively future-proofed as well, like you say, which is a great point too. I just think the consistency. They arguably, I know they didn't win today, but Piastri's pace was there. Arguably, right now they have the fastest car. I think they would be favourites for the Constructors, whatever happens. But Perez staying would make that a little bit easier for them. But but Ferrari, if they get their act together, they're only 60-odd points off the top. I mean, I'm not saying they will win it, but that just shows you how far Red Bull have fallen. Certainly in the last few races, how the field is sort of closing in on them. So I think Mercedes were 120. Obviously, that changes now because of the disqualification for Russell, but they were sort of bringing themselves back into play. So there we go. Liftoff says, when is the press conference? Press conference is done, I think. Because Russell's Russell, Hamilton. Yeah, they've done the press conference, and then obviously I think Hamilton's left the circuit, so there won't be another press conference now. So that's all done now, I'm afraid, mate. I don't know if you can find that on socials. It might be out there somewhere. I don't know if they used to, Oh, God, here we go. There goes Grandad. When I was a kid growing up, ITV used to always show the press conference after the race. And I know that they gave us some clips from it today, but I kind of wish we got to see that.
I'm with you on that, actually. Yeah, I think back to the old kind of BBC coverage of the 2010s, which is when I would say I properly got into Formula One at that point. Do I mention that I was 10 years old in 2010, or is that going to make you feel old, Sean?
Oh, well, I'm just going to kill myself.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you. I agree. I do miss hearing that, because there's been so much meme content as well, given what F1 chuck out on their social media with Lewis falling asleep the other week and things like that, and the supposed mic drop as well. There's been a lot that we could have got out of that, but yeah, I think like the cool down. We got the cool down room back. Next thing we need is the press conference.
I was about to be a right idiot. You said you were 10 in 2010. I was about to ask you what year you were born.
Come on, it's the easiest one.
Come on, Sean.
Actually, I was 1999. No. Yeah, I'm a 2000 baby. That probably makes you feel even older, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, given that I remember celebrating the millennium, yeah. Anyway, that's me done for the night. Yeah, so a few people just saying you're a baby, and then actually Clanton pointing out that I'm a baby compared to him, so that's fair enough. That makes me feel a little bit better. There we go. I would like to stress, well, not that 38 is old. I must make that point. Will's like, Grandad. Red Bull have lost too many points. Even if Ricciardo is second coming, McLaren have the edge, says RC Parker. CPV says, I'll correct myself, it's 34 points, not 52. Maths was never my strongest subject. I'll also repeat for anyone just joining that championship table is wrong. I'm not changing it. I don't want to just leave a blank square there. So there we go. Danny Rick, driver of the day for Michael Reeder. There we go. Hit the like, says Locasemi. Absolutely, hit that like button. What was loose between Lewis's legs, says Dell.
He was just excited.
Yes, he was leading. Would be exciting. You're leading the Belgian Grand Prix. There you go. Anyway, any more questions? Ideally related to the race and not necessarily what's between drivers' legs. That'd be fantastic. And not age. That'd be brilliant. Or F1 in general. We can do some silly season speculation as well if that's what you want. But you'll need to throw the questions at us, and we'll do that for the next sort of, where are we? 10 minutes. We'll say 10 minutes, and then we'll probably call it there. And by 10 minutes, Will's been here before. He knows that's probably another 16 hours before we're done. So that's fair enough. Well, I mean, actually, while they're getting questions in, actually, Will, I was going to ask you this at the start, actually, because it's been a long time since we've spoken properly, outside of our chat in DMs earlier this year. But how have you found this season? Because I know at the start of the season, and like I said to you earlier, when we last spoke on a stream, we were talking about the next 2 years being utter domination from Red Bull. Start of the season looked like that's what we were going to get, and then it's kind of just absolutely exploded into life. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? The turnaround from, again, when we last spoke properly on the stream, but also just from the start of this season, that convergence has been insane.
Yeah, I think given how depressed we all were back at Bahrain when, it was Red Bull 1-2 and even Perez looked competitive, it wasn't looking good. But I shouldn't, but I do base this somewhat off what I get in terms of YouTube analytics, and I kind of compare this year to last year with my IndyCar content as well. Last year, despite being a Formula One channel, my IndyCar videos were the ones that were making more views, and then this year, even when actually or even during the early part of the season, all of a sudden there was this big swing and Formula One seemed a lot more popular again. And it was odd because I didn't understand at the start of the year, but then now, as we've kind of got into this stage from kind of Monaco onwards, or sorry, Miami onwards, I should say, and we've had all these different winners. It's been fantastic. I've seen some people comparing it to 2012, and I think that's a step too far. If we had a title battle to go along with it, then yep, I'd say 2012, fair enough. But given what I think we expected, maybe 2 or 3 rounds into the season, I'm chuffed with what we're getting here. I'm really happy with it.
It's just been great, and it's like, I mean, Dell's just said there, it's got some excitement, but it's a shame there's no overtaking. It's not even just the overtaking thing; it's just having cars close. You know, having going into a race weekend, doing predictions and not knowing who's going to be the fastest, not knowing who's going to win. And I think that makes such a difference. And then seeing, like, today, you've got 2 cars fighting for the win. And all right, Max might have been up there without the penalty, but today, because of the way it all worked out, you've got McLaren and Mercedes fighting, and there's no Red Bull really in sight for that win. So that makes it interesting. But then another weekend, we've got Red Bull and McLaren, and then another weekend, it's Ferrari find something to get in the mix, and Mercedes are back again. And it's just no predicting it. And we are getting close racing. The overtaking isn't coming like we saw today because of that DRS zone being shortened a little bit, but it's definitely closer, and that's what gets me excited. I don't want to go into race weekends. Max Verstappen is on my list of favourite drivers, but I don't want to go into every weekend knowing pretty confidently he's going to win. I don't want to know who wins. I want to be able to sit and go, oh my God, when I do my previews and go, last time out, how did my predictions go? I want to say they were terrible, because that means that we don't know what's going to happen. And I love that about this season. So it's been brilliant. Obviously next year, as you've already touched on, Will, could be epic. You're looking forward to that. I think we all are. I will offer some caution that we've had seasons before in the middle of dominant periods that have been epic, and then that next season that team comes back and builds a car that's absolutely insane or gets it right and they go and dominate again. But let's stay optimistic for now. let's not ruin it before we even finish this season. But no, I'm really really looking forward to the rest of this season and next season. I think the only downside, and it's a point I want to make actually, they said on Sky the races in the second after the summer break come thick and fast. No, they don't. Actually, we've only got 10. We've had 14, and I think we've got. Let me find the list, because this is just I can't. I still haven't found, by the way, and we are in July, nearly at the end of July. I still haven't found an official reason why, but we have got the Netherlands and Italy back to back. But they got a week off. We've then got Azerbaijan and Singapore. I think that's a week off, isn't it? Or am I missing that again? 1 second. 1st to the 15th. No, 2 weeks off. So a week off, and then a week off, and then it's on to Azerbaijan and Singapore. Then we've got best part of a month until the US Grand Prix in Texas for reasons. Then we've got Mexico and Brazil finishing that triple header. Then we've got I think we've got 2 or 3 empty weeks before we get to Las Vegas. Then it's on to a triple header of Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. So we've got almost 2 extra mini autumn and winter breaks coming up for some reason the second half of the season. So they're not coming thick and fast, and I don't know why that is. But we've still got some great races coming up there, some great tracks in that list. I'd happily lose some of them. But some great, Zandvoort tends to be pretty good, so I'm looking forward to that one. But sorry, I was just a random point there. Joseph says, what's the top 5 drivers by the end of this season? We'll maybe come back to that, Joseph, but thank you very much for your super chat. That sounds like a longer question to answer, but yeah, do you know, Will, have you seen anything official as to why we've got this stop start phase now? Obviously the summer break is baked into regulations, but the calendar's a bit weird, and it's not the same next year. So I don't know why it's this year specifically.
Yeah, no, I've not got a clue. I don't know if it has anything to do with obviously Baku being shifted back, but then again, actually, no, that you think they'll have the opposite effect actually. So, no, I don't know. Obviously, we're missing. I said we're missing Japan in its usual slot. It's the only thing I can think of. I can't think of any other races that have been dramatically moved forwards. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, as a content creator who also has a second job, I'm kind of glad. I'll take the breaks when they come. So, and given I'm covering Indy as well this year for it, so I'm very, very glad that we are closing in on the end of closing in a few more breaks. I can actually have a weekend off. That'd be nice. But I don't know. Is the short answer to that.
Maybe just because they're flyaways, maybe the gaps between some of the races, like literal distance between some of the races, is a bit big. But then you've got Vegas to Qatar to Abu Dhabi, so they're not that bothered, are they? You could have bought Vegas forward. You could have bought. You could have broken up a couple of those triple headers, is what I'm saying. I guess
we're not in the European season anymore as well, I guess. So in terms of actual distance for the teams to travel, it's probably increased a lot more. So they won't put some of the triple headers around there. I wonder if that's a reason. I don't know.
Let's do some of these questions as quick fire as we can, Will. I know we're not very good at quick fire, but let's go for it anyway. Harvey says, where is Carlos Sainz going to end up? I've said Williams is the latest rumour. I still think Williams, of the available options, is probably the better pick now. But of course, Sauber getting Audi might change his mind in 26. But I think the here and now, I would pick Williams over Sauber. But of course, he might think longer term. So I'm going to go Williams.
I will play devil's advocate and say Alpine, but I can also see him going to Williams. The one place I don't see him going now is Audi. And I think, Mattia Binotto going there, if anything, is just solidified. If I was Sainz, I would not want to work under him again. So, yeah, I think he could end up... I think this whole Mercedes partnership with Alpine could be more enticing than Williams. I just kind of think of, yes, Williams are signing all these people, but I feel like they've been signing these people for years, and having seen their facilities through job interviews, which I didn't get, which hasn't made me salty whatsoever. If you compare that to what they've got at Enstone, there's more potential. Enstone have everything they need, they just don't know what to do with it, and they can't seem to keep staff long enough to do anything with it. But we're still going to make this quick fire. I was doing a rubbish job at that. Alpine. There you go, Alpine.
So if I edit that was quick fire, but I don't edit these. So there you go. Sighted canvas, so there's still upgrades coming after the summer break. I mean, yes, absolutely. I think this is going to be, you can expect cars to be updated pretty consistently between now and the end of the season, and probably to some of the early European rounds next year, Will, because of course they start on the 2026 cars next year, so they're all going to start pretty quickly on that. So it'll be about getting this car this season, because these are all going to carry over basically with a few upgrades. So I think probably going to see upgrades to the early European races next year, and then anything after that will be very minor, because the big focus is going to be on 26.
Yeah, we'll see if anyone pulls like a Red Bull from 2013 and just kind of develops the shit out of their existing car to get an advantage for 1 year and go for like a glory run before absolutely falling away at the start of 26. It makes no sense to do that from a long-term perspective, but I think, yeah, we're basically stuck in the 2021 situation again, when we almost get B-spec cars of this year. I don't think we'll see a lot of development.
It's interesting that point you make, actually, because with it being changes to the power unit regulations and obviously the chassis, manufacturers might have a little edge. There's a possibility. We don't know for sure. Obviously, that's speculation. But a team like McLaren, for example, who are a customer, who may find it a bit tricky at the start of 2026 with them trying to... Obviously, for example, they're going to have Mercedes power. Mercedes are going to build their car around their engine. McLaren have got a slotted engine into that car. So that might help Mercedes a little bit. So maybe next year, McLaren go for the glory run.
That's true. And it's something that McLaren have done in the past. They've been notorious for getting better and better and kind of upgrading their car further into a season. I mean, they did it last year, they did it the year before as well. So I can see that, actually. Out of all the teams, if anyone's going to do it, I can see McLaren going for it and gunning, getting a Norris championship, but then struggling. I don't think the power unit side won't be as maybe blatant as it was in 2014, because you can't obviously give people rubbish engines anymore, like you could back then, and any upgrades had to be installed on every engine at the same time, which is that, like, yeah, why it took so many years for that to happen, I don't know. But now we're not in that situation. I think we won't see as kind of dramatic effect as we did back then, 10 years ago. Jeez, that was 10 years ago. Oh, now I feel old. But
you can stop it right now.
But McLaren glory run, I can see it. I don't think it's a smart move, but I can see it happening.
It's an interesting question from Calibra, actually, this one, because I don't think we talk about this a lot. Is Zhou underperforming in your opinion? Seems like he's dropped off a lot from previous years, but not sure if that's just the car. I think he seems to be bearing the brunt of Sauber's bad luck this year. It feels like, off the top of my head.
But he's ahead of Bottas in the standings. Bottas is currently behind Sargeant in the standings.
He's 21st out of 20 drivers.
Yeah, exactly. I think the state of that car doesn't help. I mean, Zhou obviously got points on his debut, didn't he? But was he ever a standout prospect in F2? No. Has he been a standout prospect here? No.
No.
I mean,
I think he's better than some people make him out to be.
Yeah. He's no Mazepin or Sargeant,
but he's also not anywhere near.
I think 3 years in F1 is maybe more than. It's either more or the exact amount of time I'd expect from a driver of his caliber. I mean, he's not made a big enough progression to step up anywhere else. He's got the money back in, which could get him a seat elsewhere, but I don't think it will at this stage. I know there was rumours at Haas, but they're obviously all locked in with Behrman and Ocon now, and I can't see once they sign Behrman, I don't see Zhou fitting into that lineup anyway. So he can go off, he can enjoy his McDonald's adverts for a little bit longer and get his free Big Macs, but I think he's done his time, and I think he could succeed somewhere else. Formula E, I can see him. Is there not a Chinese team in Formula E? Is ERT still a Chinese outfit? I can't remember. I know they were with Neo, but I wonder if that could be a potential landing spot, because they haven't got drivers for next year yet.
I would say I think of all the options, he's the least likely to stay at Sauber next year. But I wouldn't totally rule him out, because that Chinese market is a huge one that Audi might want to try and corner. So they might be tempted on a purely marketing point of view, or from a purely marketing point of view, they might be tempted by that. But actually, and you've made the point there, if the choice is between Zhou and Bottas for that second Sauber seat, no offense to Pascal who's here, I'm probably sat there going, oh Jesus, is that it? I don't think Bottas is a bad driver, but I don't think he's really covered himself in glory this year. But then again, it could just be the car. The car isn't great at all, so we'll see in the coming months if they can improve that. But I think very much transitional for Sauber at the minute, and I think next year's going to suck as well, and it's all about 26 for them. Clansom, this is one word answer then, Will. See if we can do this.
Oh.
Question: will Max win the World Drivers' Championship in 2025?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, hang on, 25, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to go opposite whatever you said anyway, so yes, to keep it interesting. So that was our one-word answer, which consisted of at least 20, so there we go. Thank you to the super chats, by the way. Joseph says, what's the top 5 drivers at the end of the season? Super quickly: Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Russell. I just don't feel good about Ferrari. I'm sorry, I just don't. And I'm allowed to be negative. I'm a Ferrari fan, so I'm allowed to be negative about Ferrari. Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, and then Russell or Leclerc, or maybe someone in there, maybe a Sainz. But yeah, that's. I'm pretty sure Verstappen's going to win it, and I think Norris will be runner-up. I think Piastri's performing well enough now. I mean, he's only 10 points behind Leclerc in the championship, so I think he's got a shot at third.
I was going to say more or less the same. I was going to go Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Leclerc.
Ruby wants us to rank the cars fast in order of fastest. I think we've not got a lot of time. Well, I'll tell you what, Ruby, I keep meaning to do this. Message me on Twitter next week or the week after if you haven't heard from me. I'll see if I can get a live stream together, and we'll sit and we'll make that one of the main topics for the stream. We can take a bit more time over that, thanks. We're coming to the end of the stream now, and that feels like a good 20-minute conversation, to be honest, trying to work out who's fastest and where. So there we go. How does it feel interacting with a fellow Homo sapien who would have been a toddler during Schumacher's dominant years and newborn when the PS2 first came out? PMSL. I won't swear at your CPB, but yeah. You can't see the figure I'm holding up. I love you, really. Tiny Hanny says 2 a.m. right now. My head hurts. Yeah, sorry, we do that to people. 2 a.m. is about my time when I start to think about going to sleep, actually. So there you go. Let's have any more quick fire questions. So Binotto is back at Audi. Does that mean Seb is ruled out for Audi? Lol, maybe. You made the point about Sainz, didn't you? But I did actually see Pascal ask what our thoughts were on Binotto's return and to Audi. My absolute immediate thoughts were, really? It was one of surprise. I thought Andreas Seidel, the amount of times I said Andreas Stella this weekend, I meant Andreas Seidel, I thought was a really good pick for that team. And I still think if Aston Martin were to lose Michael Crack, I think he'd be a great one to take over Aston Martin. I was very surprised to see Seidel go, but I'm not surprised in another way, because that, a bit like Alpine, they seem to really enjoy making lots and lots of changes for some reason, and falling out amongst themselves. But Binotto's return, I had the conversation with John too. Well, Binotto's return in a leadership role was a surprise. I think something like Seidel, for example, and then having Binotto in like a technical role would have been a really smart move because that's where he really excels. I was a bit surprised that he got a leadership position.
Yeah, I've got to agree, and the thing that worries me the most is obviously the whole reason this has come about is because apparently Seidel and Hoffman had a mini power struggle. There wants to be Red Bull. They had a little mini power struggle going on, and Audi were like, "Nah, I'm having enough of this," and sacked both of them. But they've given both of their roles to Binotto, which sounds eerily similar to how he ended up at Ferrari, where he basically started taking over everyone's roles, couldn't really handle everything, and then Ferrari kind of fell into a pit of being a glorified meme. So I agree. I think put Binotto in as a technical advisor or chuck him on the engine side, because that's where he was at Ferrari and that's where he excelled. I think then you've actually got something that's very enticing to the likes of Sainz or Vettel, even if he wants to come back. Binotto as a team principal, I just don't rate. I don't rate him as a leader in that front. So yeah, I think that's where they've made the mistake. But I've been proven wrong many a time in the past, so maybe I will be again.
I will say, chat pointed out as well, I forgot this, he's CEO, but he is also Chief Technical Officer as well. But I think my point still stands. I think his focus should be on the engine and the technical side rather than the CEO side. But maybe, I mean, it might be in a month's time, 2 months' time, whatever, we might find out that actually he was acting CEO and they bring somebody else in and then he goes to the technical side and focuses on that fully. But yeah, it was a bit of a surprise to see that. Maybe not him return. Like I say, him coming in on the engine side for somebody, you know, whether that's Audi or even if Renault had stuck around going there, something like that, wouldn't have been a surprise. But to come in at the role that he has shocked me a little bit, particularly with Andreas Seidel. Nearly did it again, going, because I do rate that guy quite highly. I think he did a cracking job at McLaren, really. Not that Stella isn't, by the way, but yeah. I think we will leave it there, though, Will. Do the teams have much say over new entries into F1? Asks Alfie Alf. Yes, some might argue too much say. But that's a story for another day. Thank you very much, Will, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again. I promise, if you're up for another one, of course, we won't leave it a year till the next time we do one of these. That feels a little bit ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, sounds good.
But yeah, really excited for what I've got coming up over the summer break, which I'm sure we'll discuss at some point, but also the rest of this season and into next season. I think we've got a cracking 15, 16, 17, 18 months coming up, and it's just such a bloody shame that we're going to reset it all in 26. But there you go. We'll enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, we will. I cannot wait for just a few days off. I mean, so I got back from Hungary on Wednesday. Tuesday. And then it was a case of catching up on the Hungary review, catch up on the IndyCar over the weekend, then straight into Belgium, and then it's just like, oh, I can finally breathe now. I cannot wait.
Yeah, get some rest, enjoy it, have a beer. I don't know if you drink, but have a beer. If you don't drink, don't have a beer.
I'll have something stronger than a beer, trust me.
Fair enough, or several. But yeah, thank you very much, mate, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you to Will. Thank you as well, of course, to you guys for tuning in. Like I say, keep an eye on the channel over the coming days and weeks. Things could get interesting, but I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to jinx something or cause problems. But thank you to Corey, by the way, for subbing, just subscribing, and to Tony Kennedy as well. Thanks to MF, to Sarthak for subscribing, Lester, to DT Thomas, or D Thomas, sorry. Thank you to Suhu, to Stephen, to Benek, to, is it Ilya? To another Stephen Lamb, to Captain George as well, for subscribing. Really appreciate you joining us on the channel, and looking forward to talking about the rest of the season with you all soon. So yes, I will be back soon. I'm not going to commit to anything just yet, but I will be back soon. There will be content over the summer. I'd imagine if we get any news in the coming days about Perez, I'm going to do something, and we'll do some live streams over the summer as well to sort of hang out a little bit too, and talk about F1 in general. But I'm not disappearing for the summer. There will be content, and of course, after all of that, back for Zandvoort with previews, watch-alongs, and race reactions as well. You can follow me on socials for what it's worth. Just search for @F1 Word or the F1 Word on whichever social media app thingy-mabob you use, feel free. But yeah, thank you for your support over these first 14 races. Still 10 to go, lots to come, which I can't wait for. And I hope we can enjoy the rest of this season together and we get an absolute corker. I'm sure we will. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.